Call this meeting to order. This is the Monday, February 8th Town Council meeting, Town of Kensington. We're going to have a moment of silence. Before we do that, though, I want to, Jack Gaffey was nice enough to inform me that one of our longtime residents, a 70-year resident, Doris Lee, who lived on Frederick Place, passed away on January 18th. And she had been living in a nursing facility in Silver Spring, but we want to keep her family in our thoughts and prayers. Is there anyone else? Jack, did you want to add something about Doris?
Frederick Avenue.
I think I said that, but yes, yeah. Frederick Avenue resident. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. She was a nice lady.
Mm-hmm.
We miss her.
Very good. Do you know how long was she in the nursing home?
A couple years, maybe.
Okay. Okay. Is anybody else have someone that you want to think about in our moment of silence? Okay. All right. If we can bow our heads. Okay, thank you very much. Council, you received the minutes from our January meeting. Susan said a revived version, I think this afternoon. They were just grammatical errors, so there was no major change. Does anyone have anything, or can I get a motion to approve the January 11th minutes?
Motion to approve the January 11 minutes.
Is there a second? Nate, thank you. All those in favor? Need to see hands. Darren, I don't see a hand. Darren.
Aye.
Okay, I'll take that. Little delay there. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Susan and Matt, for the minutes. I know they're long. All right. So next item on the agenda is from the Mayor and Town Council. We're going to provide some reports. Number one is the Pepco rate case filing. And Bridget, I believe you are you going to introduce Tammy, or do you want?
I'm happy to introduce Tammy.
Okay.
Tammy is from Pepco. She's going to tell us about the rate case, and maybe you could explain what a rate case is, because I did that last week, but there might be some new folks here. And then, an overview of our town's street lighting. Oh, Tammy, you're muted.
Sure, you want me to go ahead and start now, or did you want to do other updates and come back to me?
We should let her get out of here.
Oh, okay, sure. So real briefly, I'll just go over kind of the rate plan, the rate case that we have. So if you'll recall, last year, it was around October 26th, Pepco submitted a filing to the Public Service Commission for our multi-year rate plan. I just want to highlight some real quick things under our filing. So under our filing with the Maryland Public Service Commission, Pepco is proposing to keep customer energy rates flat until March of 2023. As part of our filing, we anticipate that residential customer bills will continue to remain below those 2011 levels. With our multi-year rate plan, this gives Pepco the opportunity to invest hundreds in energy infrastructure projects and maintenance programs that support more than $1 billion in local economic impact and an existing 1,425 jobs per year of the plan. We'll also continue our workforce development efforts to provide more jobs for Marylanders. And an exciting piece, I'm not sure if it was discussed last week, of course, is the build out of our EV Smart program to help drive that transition to clean energy transportation. And then what we're here to talk about tonight, to focus a little bit more on, is that transition of Pepco-owned streetlights to LED streetlight technology, ultimately to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and help Maryland reach its emission goals. And also the smart streetlight technology features node technology, which we'll talk a little bit about tonight if folks are interested. So that's the highlight of the rate filing. It's a multi-year rate plan with the Public Service Commission. For those of you that are familiar, just real briefly, that's kind of how Pepco makes money. We spend money and then we go to the commission and file for a rate plan to recover money that's been spent. What's unique about this situation is we're doing it over a multi-year plan, which is similar to what other states do. Our sister utility to the north, BGE, has also filed a multi-year rate plan. So it really gives us that long distance approach with system planning and with investment efforts like streetlights and energy efficient, EV vehicles. So that's the high level overview of the rate filing. Joining me this evening is my colleague, Miss Lindsay North. She's one of our principal project managers working on the streetlight conversion and some of the multi-year rate plan. So certainly any questions that I'm unable to answer, I'll defer to Lindsay. And if there's nothing, if we can't answer it tonight, we can always follow up and report back. Before I transition over to the streetlight discussion, were there any questions about the MYP? Multi-year rate plan, sorry.
Council, do you have any questions? Does anyone from the audience have a question? If you could raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so let's go into streetlights.
Okay. If you'll indulge me, I do have another presentation. I'm not sure how much time I have, so I'll try and get through it as quickly as I can. As we go through the presentation, what I'll do is I'll take questions at the end of each slide because it is a lot of information that it's not always easy to digest at the end. So we'll take it slide at a time. So if you'll just give me 1 second. And if it's possible, someone could just let me know when they see my screen.
We can see it.
Wonderful. So I'm going to just walk real briefly through our street lighting initiative. So it's a conversion of 84,000 company-owned streetlights in Maryland to LED with smart node technology, starting with 66,000 in Pepco, Maryland. In our filing, the plan is for a 5-year deployment for a territory-wide conversion. For those of you that are familiar, Pepco has the suburban DC areas of both Montgomery and Prince George's County. So that's kind of the area where we're talking about. Couple of points under the filing: no upfront cost to customers who convert to LED. New monthly rates that are at or below what customers are currently paying. Smart nodes on every new light that enable more efficient operations, including monitoring. When those street lights do go out, this now gives us that two-way functionality to capture that. Over 26 different LED lighting options with the smart LED lighting and a centralized management system included in the program, and the smart sensor pilots that we'll talk about a little bit more as we go through the presentation. So that's the high-level overview of what is proposed to the commission for this conversion. Are there any questions from council at this point?
Tammy, hi, this is Connor. One question would be, so Pepco owns 84,000 lights, 66 of which are in Maryland that you guys are all changing over, but they're all over the state. They're all over Montgomery County, and then obviously within the town of Kensington. Of the 26 different lighting options, which gets into kind of our discussion here, how does any one area have a choice? Like, what choices do we have ultimately in what the design, look, and options are for the lights that are going to be in our jurisdiction?
Sure, I can go over tonight the different fixtures that are proposed under our plan. What influenced this particular selection is, and what I think a lot of our customers will find, is it really mirrors a lot of what's already in existence. So it's not really a drastic change. For our localities, there are some additional decorative features that we're also able to offer under our offerings, and we think and also there are different ranges. There more wattages to choose from, as well as where the lighting's projected. It's just there are different types that are also offered as well. So it's not only the fixtures themselves, but it's also the lighting types that there's more of a variety around. And I do have those slides too that we can go over to show to customers. Does that answer your question?
Does. Thank you, Tammy.
I'll just jump to the next slide really quickly, just going over in more detail some of the benefits. I won't read this word for word because I know many of you are already looking at it, and we can also make arrangements to get this presentation to this group afterwards. Energy consumption reduction, obviously LEDs give us the opportunity to reduce the amount of energy that's consumed by street lights 60 to 80%. There's the greenhouse gas reduction factor over the life of the street lights. This program will save CO2 that'll help communities meet those long-term emissions goals. Longer equipment life and reduced maintenance costs. LEDs have a significantly long life, 15 years. When you factor in not having to do as many truck rolls, not having to make as many repairs, those are savings that we anticipate we can extend to our customers. Advanced lighting controls, the two-way communication features of the smart node, the smart technology capabilities with the smart node. It allows our cities, and some of them have already had the conversations, if any of you have been to MML, it's the backbone of smart cities technology that we're really excited about being able to offer under this filing. And then of course, with such a large scale project, we do anticipate that there will be a benefit to the local workforce. And then also long-term with this new cutting edge technology, it gives us the opportunity to really think about those contractors and those resources and those long-term jobs that this conversion will enable in the area. I know I'm flying through this, so please let me know if there are any questions as it relates to benefits.
Go ahead, Nate.
I just, so Tammy, thanks. This is Nate. We spoke before when you and Bridget and I met, and I didn't want to gloss over this energy or the monthly cost bill on the bill savings that the customers would have. I mean, you have a lot of reasons that those costs might go down for customers. I mean, it looks like it's the energy consumption going down, the energy efficiency improves by 60, 80%, maintenance costs go down, et cetera. So is that going to translate to at least 60 to 80% reduction in bills? And if not, what would it look like? Thanks.
I can't say that it would be a 60 to 80% reduction in bills, but where street lighting is concerned, what we anticipate under this filing is that customers would see either no significant change to what they're paying, or they would see some reduced cost for street lights under this filing. Lindsay, is there anything that you'd like to add to that, or anything that I'm not really focusing on?
No, I mean, I think the main thing to keep in mind with this is that previously with these streetlights, there was an upfront cost, which covered the cost of the fixture and the replacement of the fixture. So that wasn't in your monthly rate previously. Now what we've done is we've removed that upfront cost and put it into your monthly rates, and your rates are still going to be at the same as they are, or going down. So I think what you're going to see, all of the reductions, energy reductions and the maintenance benefits are helping to basically cover those upfront costs, which normally you would have had to pay for. I think the other thing to keep in mind is the differences for costs largely have to do with the wattage of the lights that you have and the styles. So if you want like a really fancy style light, it might not be, might come in a little bit more expensive than some of the, more basic styles like a Cobra head. So all of that is outlined in company witness Schaefer. So Lance Schaefer, his testimony, there's multiple tables within his testimony that go into, what's moving from one style to the next, what that impact will be from a monthly perspective.
Thank you, Lindsay. Were there any other questions about the benefits?
I asked people to put questions in the chat, so I don't see any on here, but Darren, was that you that had a question?
No, that's me.
Oh, sorry,
This is
Connor.
So on this slide, the smart technology capabilities is interesting. This came up last week. Some of this was started to be shared with us by our other council members, but there's things in here you talk about sensors for parking and traffic monitoring and pollution and gunshot. Who chooses which of the smart technology capabilities are going to be turned on, used, made available? Who pays for them? Because a lot of the, is it our jurisdiction? Is it the county? I mean, as I think about traffic monitoring, who's monitoring the traffic? What are the programs being used? It's certainly not the town.
That's an excellent question. I'll take a first pass at it, and then certainly Lindsay, feel free to add any additional color or anything that I've missed. As part of this filing, one of the things that we're proposing is a pilot project that would give us the opportunity to pilot the real nuts and bolts of the smart node technology in a locality. Long term, what we anticipate would happen is municipal customers or county entities working with Pepco would determine of those technologies what are the most applicable or what their localities can derive the most benefit from. And then as part of the pilot, it also gives us the opportunity to not only pilot the technology, but also make a plan for implementing that technology, managing that program on the Pepco side, as well as on the locality side. Lindsay, I'm not sure if you want to add anything or anything that I may have missed.
Just one thing, and I know this terminology is a little bit of a slip of a tongue. So the smart nodes are going to be on every light, and that's what allows for some of those operational benefits and creates that two-way connectivity so we can see how the light is working in the field. The smart sensors, those are the things that we're piloting within that. And the other key element so all of that was great, Tammy. I think the other thing that's an important piece of the piloting portion of it is we're going to put all of these sensors through our IT testing so that when they come onto the network, they'll basically backstopped by our IT infrastructure. And so that's not something that you guys would have to worry about from your perspective, worrying that, somebody would be able to get in. So I think that's the other key thing about the pilot. It will allow us to basically build out the capabilities. So in the future, if you guys came to us and say, hey, we're really interested in like 10 air quality sensors, we could sit down with you and say, okay, based on what we know about these sensors, these might be great locations to put them. This is how much it's going to cost. And we'll go from there. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Lindsay. Yes, absolutely. I think what we really want to convey is there's no universe where the smart sensor goes in on Monday and Tuesday everybody has gunshot detection. No. It's certainly a longer effort.
So I'm just curious because there's a lot of potential community benefit to these. I'm just trying to figure out how we as a small municipality, what our voice will be and at what table we have to sit at compared to say Montgomery County, right? To determine which of these capabilities to leverage. Pollution, and gunshot monitoring sound great because the idea is that you could just be constantly monitoring and giving feedback and readout. I'd be very interested to understand how the parking and traffic monitoring works and make sure that people understand the expectation of that, because without smart sensor, capabilities, actual grid capabilities by Montgomery County DOT, I think people's thought is that you'll monitor and adjust the timing, and that's not necessarily, those two things aren't necessarily connected, correct?
I don't think they would be, but that's something I'd have to take back.
Yeah. So I'll just add to this. I think another reason why we want to pilot this technology is, so we're going to select 2 sensors to test out. And the goal is to test them out in 2 different communities. And we haven't picked those communities yet. So that'll be something that'll be done, at the end, once we get approval. But we're going to go into this with some use cases that the vendors will say, here's what these sensors can be used for. And part of the pilot is going to be testing it out to say, okay, here's what, so-and-so, the air quality person told us that this can do. How is that actually useful to you as a town? What benefit do you derive out of it? And so that's part of it's creating this like sort of business case for you all as a township to make sure that as we make these sensors, and if we were to make these sensors available to you in the future, there's actually value for you to derive. So that's a key part of the pilot. And when we pick these 2 sensors, say, okay, what are we going into it? What do we think we're going to get out of it? And then that those 2 communities would partner with us throughout that whole pilot period. And they'd be a key component to make sure that we're actually getting what we think and what we wanted from those sensors in that period.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question. I'll just go to the next slide real quick where we just take a little bit of a deeper dive into the different product descriptions. We had mentioned 26 LED options for customers to choose from. That also includes the type 5 and the type 3, and that speaks to where the lighting appears on the ground, offering more variety around the fixtures and around the lighting types, different lamp options for things like the Cobra head, also the dusk to dawn and the floodlights and the teardrop as well. Wide range of wattages from 50 to 1,000 watt equivalent to meet customer needs in all cases. And on the color temperatures, we will seek to comply with AMA guidelines, certified dark skies, and ensure safe and effective lighting. The smart nodes, which we talked a little bit about, add that communication capability and enable additional data capable components to the light poles, leverages and strengthens the existing AMI mesh network. Many of you are probably familiar 10 years ago, sitting in meetings like this when Pepco came to communities to say, we want your meter to talk to us. Well, now we're here 10 years later saying we're ready for the streetlights to start talking to us. That also leads us to what we were talking about a little bit about those building blocks for smart city initiatives. It's that 2-way functionality. A centralized management system that supports that smart node communication. It gives us full visibility to the asset health of the light. So now it's not only just waiting until the street light's out, but we're also looking at a situation where if there are any other conditions that are affecting the health or the service of a street light, we're able to see that remotely. That also makes it easier for us to respond. Something I know that a lot of people are excited about, I'm probably sure after this slide there will be a lot of questions. That centralized management system also opens up the possibility in a future state for the controllability of the streetlights. So you're looking at a situation, again, in a future state where a locality can remote dim or do on-off schedules for certain streetlights. And then the readiness, as we were speaking earlier, to add the third-party sensors and other smart components with the traffic monitoring and the parking and the air pollution monitoring as well. All that's under what we get with the centralized management system. So that's kind of a deeper dive. Before I open it up for questions, I know Lindsay's probably seething. Is there anything that I've glossed over? Is there anything else that you wanted to highlight on this slide, Lindsay?
I think the only thing I would just add is on the controllability piece. So the dimming and on and off schedules, those functionalities will be available right away. They'll just be controlled by us. So you guys could request, you'll say, for April through May, we want the, lights to dim a certain amount, 50% between 12 and 5 a.m., something like that. So the capability, assuming we get what we've proposed, will be there right away. It just won't be in your hands. That's the future state of it, just to clarify that.
And just someone asked a question in the chat. What is AMA? If you could just.
That's the American Medical Association.
Okay, thank you.
So just going to the next slide, talking a little bit about the Empower funding. I know this is probably another discussion that you all probably had at some point. So for the conversions that result in the monthly streetlight bill increases, Pepco's proposed to make available the Empower funding to offset the increase. So that's pretty significant. The needed amount was calculated on a per light basis, comparing the estimated current monthly total charges with the post-conversion monthly total charges. That also includes the energy. So if Pepco gets approval of this proposal, immediately following, Pepco will have to conduct a field survey to confirm the type of light and the location for each light, and then make a recommendation for the equivalent LED and calculate the eligible Empower offset if it's appropriate. Now, I want to pause here because, you know, something that when we're engaging in these conversations with municipalities, you know, if we are successful with our proposal, if we gain approval, there is a period of time where, as we're doing the field survey work, as we're tracking these assets, it gives us the opportunity for a level of engagement with our municipalities, to, you know, talk about the lights, to talk about the fixtures, to have those discussions, and address questions and concerns. So there is an entire sort of naturally built-in process that goes along with this. And, you know, we'll be working very intensely with communities as we go through these conversions, because we understand, you know, you're working to serve your residents and we're working to serve our customers, and we both have the vested interest in getting this right. The fixtures that will be provided to the customer, at which point then, you know, after we agree on everything and we change the fixture styles and sizes, however, the amount of Empower that a customer is eligible for will be based on their current fixture and size. So I know there's a lot of information in this slide and there's probably a lot of questions. Before I open it up for everybody, Lindsay, was there anything that you would like to add to this discussion?
No, I think that was great. Happy to take any questions.
Yes. Okay. We can always come
Or
back.
not. That's great.
Yeah, no, we can always come back. And if you think of anything, let us know. And so the last slide that I have here, it just highlights the smart sensor pilot that we were talking about earlier, leveraging the deployment of the smart street light, you know, that forward-looking pilot program, so that way we can start thinking about the additional technologies. Under our proposal to the Public Service Commission, it's installed 2 sensor types for a total of up to 50 sensors under the pilot, just to gain some lessons learned. Pepco will own the pilot sensors to determine the viability of company-owned or third-party owned for a future filing. A 2-year pilot for 2 communities will be selected after commission approval. There's no cost to the communities that would be selected for participation. And then, of course, we'll be leveraging the existing AMI network to create that network of smart sensors. And we'll be deploying the sensors alongside the Streetlight Initiative, just to gain those efficiencies with the installations. So it's not a, you know, step 1, step 2 for the pilot program, because we know that's what really everybody's going to be interested in. We would seek to do the sensors at the same time we would do the lights. That is the last slide. And what I'll do is, certainly if there are any questions, I can go back and project a slide, but I wanted to just pull up the lights that are proposed under the filing for people to see. And so while I'm doing that, if there are any questions, please let me know.
Tammy, can you, sorry.
Yeah, no.
Can you tell me what's like the plan to upgrade, you know, the parking lots, and like shopping centers and all that, in addition to the street lights?
So those lights are privately owned, and they're not covered under the filing. Our filing is only for the Pepco owned street lights.
So none of those lights are owned by Pepco?
If you're talking about like in a Safeway parking lot, or
say like a transit parking lot, like at the
those are customer owned facilities. A good rule of thumb is, if it's on a wood pole, it belongs to Pepco. If it's on a metal pole, it's privately owned. Now, when those lights are metal poled, those street lights are a metal pole, Pepco does supply the feed to the fixture. So that underground feed into the base of the pole is Pepco's responsibility. But once that feed ties into the components of that middle street light, that becomes, that's customer owned.
Okay, so like St. Paul's Church.
Those
those
actually
were-
belong, those two in the parking lot belong to Pepco.
And if they're certainly, if they're wooden, are they wood?
They're wooden pole,
Yeah.
I work at St. Paul's. They're wooden poles and they're
Yeah.
on our Pepco bill. And they were
So-
probably put in, 50 years ago or whenever. So that's
So
why,
yeah, those would be covered
right.
under the filing.
But the metal poles, the ones on Howard Avenue, they belong to the town. The ones that are on the Safeway, I think the Safeway takes care of those. The ones that are over at Capital One that have the decorative poles, those belong to Capital One. They maintain them. So,
Yeah,
And
our
I-
filing is only for those Pepco owned facilities.
So one question I had, Tammy and Connor, what happens in a scenario where a light is on it's a Pepco light on a wood pole along, say, Connecticut Avenue, which is also a state highway.
Mhm.
And so the town, we may have an interest in how that, what the fixture is, but the wattage, what the purpose and intent of the light is. And the state highway may say, yeah, but we have a whole different, right? We're all about lighting the road for the cars. Our interest is lighting the sidewalks and or keeping the light low during the overnight hours, so it's not shining into residences. Who wins in that scenario? How is Pepco going to manage two different entities having perhaps two different desires for the light?
Thank you, Connor. And I know we've had those internal discussions because we're aware that's a possibility. Certainly in a case such as this, where the town would have a vested interest, to my knowledge, State Highway has not signaled any willingness to be unreasonable. I still think we're early enough in this process where, in communicating this concern with other stakeholders, there's still plenty of opportunity for the municipality to be the winner in this situation. But, that's something that we're just going to have to monitor as we continue with the filing process. But we are aware of that concern.
And just to clarify, Tammy, the poles along Connecticut Avenue, somebody asked a question about what is the pedestrian scale lighting on Connecticut Avenue? Is that the question that Connor, you were referring to when asking whether State Highway has a preference?
Yeah, I'll be first to admit I don't understand how this works with Pepco and between Lindsay and Tammy to help educate us. The lights that are there currently, the teardrop style or the Cobra head style light is really there to light the roadway. And so State Highway is going to probably have a certain opinion as to how much light, what type of light for the roadway for the purposes of maintaining a safe roadway, which we too want a safe roadway, but we also want safer pedestrian walkways and crosswalks. But we also want to balance that with quality of life and not having light shining in all directions, all hours of the day. So my question was, all of these concerns are going to come to the table, but us as one stakeholder and State Highway as another, or in another part of town, it might be us and say MCDOT. How is Pepco going to reconcile perhaps differing asks and opinions of differing stakeholders? Kind of who wins out?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'll just go back to what I said earlier. At this point, we haven't gotten any feedback from State Highway that, they would feel any particular amount of ownership, so to speak. In this case, I think you can expect that it would be like for like, obviously there'd be some similarities there. If it's all right with you, I certainly would like to continue to socialize this concern internally with our stakeholders. And, I think this is definitely going to be something that we'll just continue to monitor.
And to ask another question on that, just to understand,
Mhm.
now that you have this centralized management system and localized control over the sensors, let's say State Highway says, hey, it's up to you guys, right? and we say, the town of Kensington says, this is what we would like. And then the next door municipality, Chevy Chase View, says, this is what we would like. Pepco has the capability that the lights could be different wattages or wattage equivalents from one pole to the next, from one town to the next.
We have the capability, of course, but I think, what I pointed out in that last slide is when we go through the process of doing that walk down of assets, it's going to take into consideration what would be appropriate in terms of lighting. So as the owner of the facility, the owner of the light, we recognize that it would not be optimal to have 3 to 4 different wattages or 3 to 4 different types of lights, within close proximity. So a lot of those issues would be addressed through the process of that walk down and assessment of, what's there now, and, really just trying to ensure that continuity of service with the lights. So, I mean, like, the short and fun and exciting answer to your question is, yes, we could put a 50 here, 100 here, and a 150 over there. But I don't believe that's what we would want to do. Because that would be very difficult for drivers and pedestrians alike. And likewise, I'll say, I think also, there are opportunities for the lights to certainly be brighter on major corridors like a Connecticut Avenue versus the light that sits in front of your home. So, as part of that walk down and that, asset management process there, that's where we would really sort of hone in on the appropriate engineering and lighting types and fixtures.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. There will be shielding options that'll be available with all of these lights as well. So that's something that can be addressed within the survey as well. And then dimming. So, assuming we get the full proposal here, these lights will be able to dim, and we'll have dimming settings included, from day one during late night hours, so between 12 and 5. And then y'all will have the opportunity to further adjust those settings if you want. So that's something else to consider. That's one of the great benefits of making these smart LEDs as opposed to just LEDs. A normal LED has a photocell in it that goes on and off when it senses the sun. If you have a smart LED, it's like a little mini computer. You have this capacity to do to set schedules and to dim, and it creates a lot of additional preference and optionality to it.
Is there, Tammy, is there any updates on the town being a test location?
So I know that was one question that had been discussed in terms of demoing the lights, and we are seeking to do a centralized demo location in both Prince George's and Montgomery County. Several localities have put their hands in the air, and they've all agreed to host demo sites within their locality. And just strategically and efficiently, when you have 40 municipalities across 2 different counties, it makes it very problematic in an approach to install certain light fixtures in one location and then again in another and then sort of replaying that across the municipalities. Not to mention, the counties have also demonstrated an interest in wanting to see the lights demoed, and for their purposes and with the territory that they would be looking to light, it doesn't always lend itself to be very convenient to do it in a locality by locality area. So we're looking at one centralized area in both counties to demo the lights. And we're actually looking to put something in place as soon as March for that demo.
Okay. I don't want to shorten your presentation, but we do have a lot on the agenda. What would be our next step?
So certainly if you have any questions or concerns, certainly bring them to our attention to give us an opportunity to respond. There is a process for questioning, for submitting questions to Pepco through the filing that you could also take advantage of. We anticipate a response from the commission this spring. Something that I will put to your community and to residents and to anybody within the listening audience is, we are interested in people that can write letters of support. If you are very interested in these LED conversions, you don't have to speak on the MYP, but if you're somebody who has a vested interest in electric vehicle technology and rolling out that backbone, if you're interested in the smart light and the street and the node technology, certainly we would appreciate working with you to compel a letter of support. After the filing, we'll also continue to engage municipalities as we go through the walkthrough process. We'll certainly seek opportunities to have more call sessions like this, where we're having the presentation and question and answer. And what I can do is immediately after this meeting, I can just email you these streetlight offerings for you all to look at, if that would be helpful.
Okay, yeah, that would be very helpful. And Councilmember Bridget Hill-Zayed is taking the lead on this, so we will rely on her to do the follow-ups with regard to any letters that may be helpful. And because I think people are interested in this proposal.
Yes.
And just for clarity, because someone's asked on the chat, is Kensington up at all as a consideration for a location for a demonstration, or
for the sensors?
Yeah, well, no, for
Oh,
demonstrating the different lights.
The area where we're looking at would be our Rockville Service Center, because it has the capacity to support a lot of visitors. It has an open area, it has a parking lot. It also has tree-lined areas so people can see the lights relative to trees and other structures. It's the same location as our watershed house. So for Montgomery County, we are looking at the option of siting the demo facility at our service center.
Okay, well, that certainly makes sense. Okay.
Tammy,
Go ahead, Nate.
just to follow up, when we spoke last time, you had mentioned that if Kensington was not selected for a demonstration site, that when you go through the walkthrough process with each community, perhaps beforehand, if we had narrowed it down to a certain number or maybe a couple of different options, that you'd be willing to work with us to demo a limited number of them, right? Is that still on the table?
That's definitely something we can keep on the table to look at as we're going through this filing process. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bridget, do you have any other questions before we close out on this topic?
Nope.
Okay. Tammy and Lindsay, I don't want to cut you off. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I'll send this right after I get off the meeting here to the team.
Okay, yeah, Bridget is going to provide, we're going to send out a newsletter at the end of the month, and we'll have an update on your Pepco presentation for tonight. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having us.
Well, thank you very much for coming, Lindsay, Tammy, thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
And if you can give me my screen back, that would be great. Good, thank you. All right. It actually was very interesting. So looks like a very good opportunity. All right, so let's go on down to number 2 on the agenda, which is the 10311 Summit Avenue variance hearing. Matt, do you want to speak on that for me?
Sure. Kevin and Christy are here. I can see them. They are requesting a variance to place a parking pad within the front plane of their property located at 10311 Summit Avenue. Staff was provided. Council was provided a staff report. And Kevin and Christy, if you guys want to go ahead.
Hi, good to see everyone. Not seeing too many people out these days lately. Yeah, basically, we just want to we want to take our existing gravel driveway and replace it with pavers and add a spur so we can turn around and we're not backing out into Summit Avenue as we often have to, because it's a pretty busy road, and it would also make it so we wouldn't have to keep both cars on the road too. So basically safety and aesthetics are the reasons we're seeking the variance.
And I know on Summit Avenue, you have, what, 2 hours where you can't park on Summit, is that correct? Okay, during,
4 to 6 in the afternoon, weekdays. So
okay,
For everyone's reference, we're right by Prospect, so we're kind of in a traffic area.
right. No,
We're further down.
I'm on Dietrich. I know where you are.
Yeah.
Council, does anybody have any questions regarding the variance request?
Maybe if I could just add one other benefit that I see from this is that, as you know, we'll be talking about the working group for the bicycling, pedestrian access and safety. I think this actually having another car or two off the road can help improve whenever, if ever, there is a bike lane added there for the master plan. It just makes things easier. And for example, there's discussions, as you'll hear, with the county to widen the sidewalk there. So along that stretch. So I think I would just add my support for this in that respect too.
Okay.
Okay.
Darren or Connor, Bridget, any comments? Before we open it up? Does
No,
anyone?
I think the variance makes sense.
Yeah, there are several, there's more than, I would say at least 3 or 4 houses on your street that have additional space for, of what you're asking for.
Correct. I don't have an exact count, but there are many that had it be prior to it being in the current rules, so they were grandfathered in.
Right, right. Okay.
When I initially heard of the idea, and then I thought of it as, avoiding stacking cars, that was sort of one basis. But now that I'm hearing that it would allow you to not back into the road and pull into the road, I think that's a very compelling reason.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Does anyone in the audience want to put something in the chat, or do they want to raise their hand and make a comment? Not seeing anything. I think we're on. Okay. Matt, what do you need? A motion?
So we need to do a formal resolution, which we can have available at the March meeting in support, unless the council, depending on which direction they go. We can have a resolution ready.
Okay. Well, do you need a motion to ask for you to make a resolution?
Yeah, just to direct the staff to draft a resolution in support of the variance request. And we will have that ready for March 8th.
Okay. Council, can someone make that motion, please?
I'll make a motion to
Go, Darren.
draft a resolution in support of the variance request.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Connor, okay. All those in favor? Want to see hands just because it's easier? Okay, all right. Kevin, Christy? Looks like you're gonna get stuff driveway.
Thank you, thank you. And what's the timing on that? You mentioned March 8th, so is that the final date and then we can proceed from there, or is there?
Yes, that we would vote on it officially. We would pass the resolution and then you can move on.
Wonderful.
Thank you guys very much.
Council, so I don't see any reason why there wouldn't be a problem here.
Fantastic. Thank you guys. And thank you, Matt, so much. He's been super helpful. So I went back and forth on this a bunch.
Good.
Appreciate it.
Good. All right, well, thank you.
All right.
Okay, page 2. All right, number 3, Darren, I think you were taking this, is that correct? Town election survey question, or Nate, which one of you were gonna? Darren, are you taking?
We're both handling it. I think it's just a question that we wanted to receive some thoughts on about how do we proceed with these 2 potential expansions of voter in town. One is 16 and 17-year-olds, and then the second are non-citizens who are residents of town. At least my suggestion all along has been that this is something that I would like to hear from residents of town more so than we normally hear at, when we propose charter or code amendments. just as an example, for our election charter amendment, we had one person testify at the last meeting at the public hearing. I really think that these are issues that merit more input. So that input can come in one of two or more ways. One would be putting it as a informational referendum on the next election, or two, if we can craft some sort of a survey that we can conduct and receive input on. I think a couple things. I would like to, maximize input. I'd like to give people the opportunity to be anonymous. That occurs if it's part of the election. I would hope it would occur if it were part of some survey. So those are my thoughts. Nate, if you want to add anything, and then we can get other people.
Yeah, I think you covered it, but just maybe I think that when we're talking about getting input from a survey versus the informational referendum, I think there are two options. One is to do an electronic survey, and then the other would be to do some sort of mailer postcard type of thing. And both have trade-offs with potential ballot stuffing versus anonymity. So I think we just need to figure out which way to move forward if we don't do it via a referendum. And just to keep in mind, if we choose the referendum route, some of the other changes we're recommending to the elections charter changes and code changes are, one of them is to not hold an election officially if it's uncontested. So we don't want to get in a situation where we're just holding an election just for an informational referendum, for example, in this upcoming election in June, if it's only 2 people running for council. So I just wanted to flag that.
Any other questions from the council?
Not questions, but I'll weigh in. I mean, I agree with Darren and Nate. I'd like to hear from a lot more people, and just, in my kind of former life living on the north side, St. Paul Park being our little hub of activity, there's a lot of people who get their town news, from me just being there as we watch our kids and dogs play in the park. I know they don't come to the meetings. Maybe they read the Around Town Journal, but a lot of times they're getting it, from me. And so it's great. I hear their thoughts on topics like this. There's got to be a lot more people like that. And I do think we need some mechanism other than just running through our council meetings to actually solicit that kind of feedback. So I don't have strong feelings whether it's electronic or postcard or ballot. I think, Nate flagged another interesting note, but I'd very much like to hear from as many people as we can get what their feelings are on these two subjects.
Well, if we were to send a postcard, that would be addressed to the household. So, and they could go online and just click, are you for this or against this? And, or do you support it, or would you like to see this happening, however you want to word it? So, and
how would we handle if a household was split?
Split being the
could be two
partner wants it one way and the partner wants it, they just cancel each other out. Is that what you're saying?
I guess, but
I mean, isn't that how elections work?
What if you have more and registered voters in a house?
Some households have 4 or 5 registered voters too.
Well,
so
I think we've basically heard these requests, I guess, anecdotally. They want, I wish I could have voted, but I don't, I'm not a citizen. I pay taxes, I live in the town, but I can't vote because and we have talked about doing this before, and I thought we had it, but apparently it never got into our, into an ordinance, went that far. So, and I know we had a young man come and to ask about 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. And we gave him, asked that he go out and get a petition because we wanted to know, do other residents want to do this? And that didn't happen. So we never got the information that we were looking for. So, it just seemed like this was a good opportunity to find out whether people want this or not. So happy to open it up to some other suggestions from the residents. If you have a way of, can think of a way that we can get this information, or maybe you want to just say, you know, I don't think we should do it. So would
I see
someone
Jack with,
like to address this? I'm sorry,
I saw Jack with his hand up.
Jack. Okay. I don't see Jack. Oh, there he is. Go ahead, Jack.
Hi. Just a comment first. I would prefer it to say town election survey questions. And to make it clear that these are two separate issues. One is the 16 and 17-year-olds, and one is the non-citizen residents. And it's certainly possible for one to be in favor of one and not of the other.
Right.
So I would have said questions. I would have said to allow 16 and 17-year-olds and or permanent residents to vote.
Well, how it's
The
written,
way it's written, it sounds like it's one shot.
no, it would be a separate question.
It should be two
The way
questions.
it's written in the agenda is not how we would phrase it in
Okay,
a totally separate. Yes.
okay. So second, yes, I agree with the idea of a survey.
Okay.
You will reach a lot more people than you reach in elections. Often, you know, in the past elections have only been 200 or 300 people out of 2,000.
Right.
Although the last one with mail-in voting had a much higher participation
Yes, it
rate.
did.
But yes, a postcard sent to everybody, the way you send postcards for other issues, I think would be a good idea.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Anyone else? Too nice, so I can't. Okay.
Joe Campbell put in the chat a non-binding referendum question on ballot in June would be an inexpensive option. So I just want to make sure people know that.
Yes. Yeah, it would not, we would actually have to pass an ordinance. Is that correct, Matt? So whatever is in the ballot would be non-binding. It would just be informational.
What if you did the survey at the election, the next town election?
Well, that would be, we would put it on the ballot.
Yeah,
But it would,
yeah.
Yeah.
Good idea.
But we might not have an election.
well, part of the change is that we're making that if there is 2 seats open and there are only 2 people running, then we would actually just call the election.
Wow.
We're following what Garrett Park does.
Well, and then the other aspect is even if we have an election and it's uncontested, you know, the difference between contested and uncontested elections could be 75 people turning out just because it's fun to go out on an election night when the results are already determined versus several hundred. So I think my goal here is to hear from as many people as possible. So I'm looking to structure the survey or referendum or whatever we're talking about to gather the most amount of input. Just one note, and I think we can overcome this, but you know, if we mail postcards to households, and maybe we mail 4 postcards to a 4-voter household, I think we would want to make it an option to easily peel off the address label in order to return that postcard to us in a way that doesn't have that person's name on it. Just again, I'm trying to give people the option to make their views known without having to, put a name to it, just like they would if they were voting.
Okay, well, I do think a survey gives the option of letting people think about it before they just go in and try to. Okay. Lucy had a comment in the chat regarding understanding the reasons underlying people's preferences or just their preferences. If the former survey would be the way to go. So I agree with that. All right, so sounds like we want to do a survey.
And just to, at least my view on this is 1 of 4, 5. You know, if we get this done in enough time to change the voting procedures this year, that's fine. But you know, I'm a little disheartened to see almost no input by the affected people, meaning you know, the non-citizen residents or the underage. So I'm not exactly chomping at the bit to get this done by this election. It's fine to get it by the next election as well. We have one every year.
Right.
And if you
I would
want
much prefer to
those
do it.
folks to participate, I can definitely help that happen. They talk to me pretty often about it.
I'm
So-
sorry, say that again, please.
So especially the non-citizen voters, I talk to them pretty often and they're very enthusiastic about it. So if you want their participation, I'd be happy to facilitate that.
Sure, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for more input rather than fast input.
What specifically are you looking for so I can give them good direction?
Well, no, okay, just to be clear, I'm looking for input from both currently qualified voters as well as potentially qualified voters as to yay or nay on the issue of expanding the voter rolls.
You had singled them out, that's why I'm asking.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think normally when you are looking to be enfranchised, those would be the people that would be most interested in pushing the issue the strongest.
Okay,
And
so when I have them do that, is there something specific you would like them to contribute to? Or
I just
just
wanna
the
hear
fact
from
that
them.
They
would
should
like
fill
to-
out a survey.
Okay. Okay, that's all I
Yeah.
want to hear. Thanks.
Yeah.
So on the survey, if they're not, they're obviously not voters yet. So will they actually get a postcard according to our mailing lists?
Great question.
Will they have
Me-
input into the survey, basically?
They
Will they get
won't.
to vote on whether they vote?
Well, I'm really less worried about some household receiving a postcard and then they go tell people in Parkwood, hey, go vote on this issue. I feel like I trust my residents. If they receive a postcard and they're asking about our town elections, we want your feedback, please fill out a survey. I mean, I personally, I don't think we're asking a question. I would be more than happy to put, you know, Dietrich Avenue, you know, put my address, maybe not my name, I'd put 10411 Dietrich Avenue. I mean, it's just, this is informational, but if we
Okay.
want to keep it absolutely private, I mean, we could put it as an option.
No,
If you
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I think you misunderstood. I meant that the people who are trying to solicit input who do not have the right to vote yet in our town, will they get a postcard to provide input on the survey?
Well, my point was we were just sending a postcard to the household. So anybody in the household could offer, a 16-year-old could offer their.
Okay.
So to put it another way, Tracy, instead of using the voter roll as the addressee list, we would use our town, the list of all, homes within the town.
Right. It
Yeah.
would be the same as when we send out the journal.
Yep.
We don't send the journal to 4 different voters. We send the journal to the household of whoever's in that house. And then whoever has the postcard, you know, maybe the wife doesn't want to share with the husband. I don't know, but that would be, you know, here's a survey question. You know, anyone in your household can vote. Please, you know, I don't know if I want a 5-year-old to vote, but I mean, please go online and give us your thoughts on these 2 questions. Let us know.
And I think it's important to clarify that this is not a mini election. This is gauging the temperature of the public, the voting public, but then there will be other opportunities for the people that aren't qualified voters who are 16 or 17 or non-citizens to be heard as well. So all that gets packaged into the decision of the council when it comes to whether or not to amend the charter. But I think it's just information, and I'm just trying to get as much as broad information as possible.
Okay. Well, I feel like we're going a mailed survey, correct?
I think that's what I heard.
Okay.
Sounds good.
And then follow it up with other forums, to Darren's point, so that every group, the public record is open, and we invite those groups to join us during those agendas.
Well, we are sending out, we're sending out a journal at the end of the month, and we can include an article on this as well, that that we'll be sending a survey to each household, and all members of the household. Do you want to do it 16 and up? We invite to fill out a survey to go online.
I think that's smart.
Huh?
I think that's smart.
Okay. Okay. All right. So that's what we'll do. And since, I mean, we can, I think we have to hold a hearing. Is that correct? So it's in March, April, May. We wouldn't be able to have them be able to vote in June. Yeah. So, okay, well, they would be able to, assuming that we would pass it, it would be 2022, which comes up pretty quickly. So, okay, I think that's the direction we're going.
Just to flag to Matt though, Tracy, when you're putting together the survey, I'm guessing you're gonna be working with Sue Ellen. If we're gonna link them to an online survey, we talked about this at one meeting previously, that we'll just have to make sure that they can't stuff the ballot box, so to say. I'm sure there are measures, but I think if some really overzealous people who have a very strong opinion might want to vote more than once. So we want to just try to avoid that if we can with an online survey.
See, I trust my voters. You don't.
I didn't say. I mean, this is it's an issue about who gets the right to vote in the town.
I guess so.
Well,
So Matt, I don't.
one
Is
of the
there
ways
some
that-
way of doing that?
We can talk with, if we put it on our website, we can talk with our contractor to see if there's a way to have a unique number or call or something. Otherwise, if we use a third party, we can check into how we can do that. So.
Okay.
Well, and I don't want to overthink this, but if we mail a postcard to people, and then we use a mailing label that's easy to peel off, and they can mark the postcard itself and include comments if they want, and then drop it off at the town hall.
Yeah, but then what about the other 4 people that live in that household?
Well, I think that there could be an opportunity on the postcard to say how many people in the household are being heard on this postcard.
They've eliminated their anonymity then.
Well, I don't know if it says, oh, well, 4 people are responding, so that tells us that it's
What
house.
if we just got people to send in comment? I mean, wouldn't that make this a lot easier? And then we don't have to worry about all these potential hiccups.
I don't know how.
Well,
I don't know.
we encourage people to give comments on all topics at every meeting.
Right. I mean, so wouldn't that be a lot easier? You're still getting the information you want, and then we don't have to worry about anonymity and sending out postcards to the right people. And
I think people, by sending a postcard, you get people's attention, where just like asking tonight, you're not getting, maybe the feedback that you're hoping for. By sending the postcard, you get their attention, and then you make it easier for them. Just check the box or go to this website and tell us what you want to do. You don't have to write us a letter. You don't have to, this is pretty simple. Are you for it? Are you against it? Here's a comment. If you want to leave a comment, please comment. So, I mean, this is the advantage of, someone who's, like the young man who came. If he had been able to do the petition, it's the person who really wants it, who's going out there to make it happen. But we don't have that groundswell of, of an individual. So we're just trying to respond to people who have said things to us that, oh, it'd be so nice if we could do this, but we just don't have enough people that have said that. And it does affect voting. And so we want to really get more information from people. So I'll tell you what, since they're not going to be able to be involved with this particular election that's coming up because there's not enough time. I mean, I still want to move forward with a survey, but maybe we can get more detailed. Matt can get some information regarding a survey and how we can guard against somebody, one household sending 100 votes, and get back to the council and let them know how we're going to do this. Okay.
Okay.
That's what we're going to do. Thank you. Okay. Development Review Board. Connor, I believe you're bringing up this, you'll be reporting on here.
Unmute. Perfect. Everybody can see my slides, I assume.
Yeah.
49 slides.
Really?
No, not that. But there are a couple of important development related or planning board related issues in front of the entire county that do impact the town of Kensington. So Mayor Tracy asked if I just go over them briefly with everybody this meeting, and I am going to try and be brief. At any point, if you have questions, myself, Darren on the DRB, Tracy as mayor, certainly Matt, we've been following this, but there are some big muscle movements that I just want to go through real quick. I got to figure out how to minimize all these things so I can see what I'm reading. So the biggest is talk first about Thrive Montgomery 2050, which is an update to the county's general plan. And then I'll talk about a few zoning text amendments, one that's currently on the table, but then talk about how zoning text amendments affect the town of Kensington using one from 2019 and one from 2018. So Thrive Montgomery 2050 is under review right now by, planning staff has put it together. It's in public comment. There are many sessions that are being done, planning board sessions where the public can review and give comment. But what Thrive Montgomery 2050 is an update to the county's general plan. And that general plan, called On Wedges and Corridors, was published in 1964 and last updated in 1993. So it gives you a sense that, it's been around for 60 some odd years, 70 some odd years, and it's due for an update. And so what they're doing is trying to come up with a new general plan that will help shape the county for the next 30 years. And why this is highly important is that area master plans or sector plans, like Kensington, we have our sector plan. Our plans are based off of the general plan. And so how we look at development and density and uses over the course of the next 30 years, the framework for that would be set by this new plan that they're calling Thrive Montgomery 2050. All right. So there are a couple of core themes throughout Thrive Montgomery. They're really trying to look at the economic health, community equity, and environmental resilience. In the center pane, there's these 9 big core themes that they're trying to get at. They're trying to look at this idea of corridors, community corridors, where you have what they call complete communities. And in that Thrive 2050 document, they actually highlight Kensington as fairly close to what they envision of a complete community. And what they talk about is a community where you can kind of more or less walk or through transit, live your life within 15 minutes. Could you live there, work there? Can you do your shopping, groceries, commerce there? Can you get to your place of worship? Do you have all the public features, libraries and schools and rec centers and things like that, all within your complete community? Because one of the big tenets of Thrive 2050 is they want to stop planning for cars. Cars will not be the central theme to planning going forward. Transit will be a theme, right? Connectedness is a theme, but that's talking about Metro, and it's talking about bus rapid transit, it's talking about Purple Line, it's talking about MARC. they really want to de-emphasize the planning aspects around the automobile. So through this, what they're looking at is how do they pull all of these elements together to talk about housing and housing equity and achievable housing and affordable housing and climate change and environmental impact all through this big general plan. So how is this, how is the town of Kensington getting involved? So Thrive 2050 is in draft format right now. It's a rather large document. I mean, 100 and some odd pages. And there are multiple different kind of marketing materials that the planning department and the county have put together to try and condense it, make it a little more consumable by average citizens, but it just makes for a lot of information. So as part of the DRB, Mayor Tracy came to me and said, hey, will you kind of keep a sense of what's going on with this? So Mayor Tracy, myself, Matt, have been a part of a number of Thrive meetings and talking with county planning and planning staff about the impacts of this, trying to vocalize areas where we saw some need for refinement, concerns and questions we had. And so through that, town manager, Matt Hoffman, helped emphasize that we weren't alone. He was hearing it from other town managers. So we joined into this coalition of 27 other incorporated municipalities and community organizations, civic associations that represent over 33,000 residents within Montgomery County to really amplify our voice around areas that we saw concern. And so to give you an idea of some of those areas, one is, what is the impact to traffic when you stop focusing on the cars? Because people still own cars, people will still need to get around in cars. Unfortunately, other parts of people's lives through the county are still dictated by cars. And selfishly thinking of my family, well, my kids' schools, Kensington Parkwood is really close by within our 15-minute community. When they get to North Bethesda and Walter Johnson, that's stretching that 15 minutes, depending on the time of day when we get out of COVID. But their sporting is all over the county. I mean, we're on any given day up to Germantown and out into Northern Virginia. So there are certain parts of our lives that just don't fit in that 15-minute box. So we were emphasizing some of those. The other big one is there was no conversation within Thrive Montgomery 2050 at all about how any of their plans, especially around missing middle housing and infill development, would impact historic communities, historic districts, of which the town has a rather large historic district. So we brought that up with other communities. They saw the same kind of void in that plan. We've now taken that through staff. We've made that staff aware of that concern, and we're working to try and get that addressed in future updates to the draft plan. So with that, there's still a number of planning board working sessions that are ahead. I'm going to highlight them in a second, but of note, the county executive, Mark Elrich, just recently at the end of January, he published a letter too, where he has some concerns. And I would say personally, I share them, which is just that this is an enormous plan. And it has been going through edits over the past several months as they're working through it, but they're editing it on the fly. And so sections are changing constantly. And the way that they're reviewing it is section by section, even as sections change. And it's becoming a little bit discombobulated. And so he tried to voice that to the planning department to help them understand that, if you're hearing those concerns from citizens, imagine my, administrative offices that are responsible for having to review this and determine what is the impact to their different executive agencies, and asking the planning board to just slow down a little bit. To that point, though, there are currently 6 work sessions that have been completed. You see them on the left side of your screen. They're the ones with the blue dots. Each of those on the planning board's website for Thrive Montgomery, you can see their staff report, the presentation that was given during them, and the video from those sessions if you want to go back and review any of the 6 that have been completed. The staff report is out for the session on February 11th. That's session number 7. And then the gray bullets, you can still see the upcoming 4 sessions that are tentatively planned, but please continue to watch Montgomery Planning's website because dates can shift on the agenda just before you make hard and fast plans to attend. Just make sure that you double check the dates and times for those. And then that paragraph at the bottom, the planning board chair, Mr. Casey Anderson, has left the record open very intentionally. It's going to be open through spring of 21, and he is soliciting any comments and feedback from individuals. There is the email, telephone number for fax, or the address if you want to write any comments in. That's all available off of Montgomery Planning as well. So it's one thing that the town, Mayor Tracy put her signature as the mayor in that letter from the 27 different community organizations and municipalities. But the chair is reviewing all of the correspondence. I know that they have amplified that they don't want to see chain letters. They're trying, every time they see a letter that is worded the exact same, they've already read the message, they kind of move on. But unique individual emails, just a quick email. If you have thoughts as you go through Thrive Montgomery, if you have concerns, I would like to hear them. I know Mayor Tracy would like to hear them so that we can make sure as a town, we're also taking those concerns up. But as an individual resident of the county, please make sure that if you have individual concerns, to send them into Casey Anderson as the chair of the planning board. Let me pause for a second before I go into ZTAs. Are there any questions from anybody, council or otherwise?
I think it should be clear that the Thrive 2050, we're going to talk about the ZTA 2007, but the Thrive 2050 also includes missing middle housing. And I know this is a concern of people.
Right. So this is why I'm going to talk about both of them together, is because the concept of missing middle housing really came about as it pertains to Montgomery County through Thrive Montgomery 2050. And then a county council member, Councilmember Jawando, recently introduced a zoning text amendment to also deal with missing middle housing, which kind of jumped the queue with what they were trying to do with Thrive Montgomery. So we'll get to that in just a second. Any other questions? Let's see if I can see my chat window.
I don't see anything.
Okay. Just if there are, put them in the chat window. I'll pause again here in a moment after we talk about ZTA 2007. But real quick, zoning text amendment, what often we refer to as a ZTA. This is a county council mechanism for adopting or changing, altering the zoning rules for the county in their capacity as a county council member. Oftentimes, when the zoning text amendment comes up, those zoning text amendments, they apply countywide. So, for instance, in zoning text amendment 20-07, which is really about the use of single-family properties in the R60 zone, but it's become informally known as the missing middle housing. What County Council member Will Jawando was trying to do was look for ways to change some of the building requirements within the R60 zone specifically, as it pertains to houses within a mile or a half mile of metro properties, to allow more flexibility to get either townhouses, duplexes, or small multifamily housing into what is traditionally single family zone R60 areas. So the concept is, imagine a neighborhood within a mile of metro where you may have some single story houses, a Cape Cod, a Rambler, and a developer wishes to tear that property down and then build in its place a duplex or some townhouses. By doing so, they may get 2 units of housing, a unit just being, where one family could live and another family. So in a duplex, you have 2 units of housing. If we were to talk about a triplex, that's considered 3 units of housing. But the idea is if you built a duplex where you used to have a single family home, you would have 2 units of housing where you used to only have 1 unit of housing. This helps to address the shortage of housing units that the county feels it has. So they're getting more housing. It's also, in their belief, would help to achieve more attainable housing. And what they mean by that is, imagine that single family home had to be purchased for, and I'm going to use just round numbers, but in certain parts of the county, this is not unrealistic. They bought that single family Cape Cod for $1 million and they tore it down. And this happens. They bought it for $1 million, they tear it down, and they build a duplex. But each of those duplexes is then sold for $600,000. So in total, the housing is, it costs, it comes up with a market value of $1.2 million between both sides of that duplex, but each unit is only $600,000. In the county, in the strategy within Thrive Montgomery 2050, the intent they're driving toward is, you took 1 unit of housing that cost $1 million, and you've now created 2 units of housing, each costing $600,000. So we've met one goal of creating additional units of housing, but we've also met another goal of creating 2 units of housing whose price is more attainable. That's not to say it is affordable housing. That is a whole different subject, and this sometimes gets confused in the conversation. Through discussion, even by Councilmember Jawando, but by Planning Board and others, it's been acknowledged that largely this is not going to create capital A affordable housing, meaning a housing that is tied to an income level that is often able to be achieved by people making some smaller percentage of the median income. What this will achieve is units of housing that might be more affordable than the market rate. If the housing in that neighborhood is all generally $1 million, and this unit is now $600,000, that price is more attainable than the typical market rate. And that is still something that the county is striving for in Thrive Montgomery 2050. They want to create a housing stock that has multiple varying price points to create attainability at all sorts of income levels. And right now, within the single family R60 zone, their thing is that you have large lots with large homes, and those homes are really unattainable by most people in the county from a price standpoint. When those homes are perhaps redeveloped, if we can redevelop them in size, in scope, and conducive to the buildings around it, right? You might even not realize that it's a duplex or a triplex, but now you have, 3 households able to achieve and attain a housing in an area that they might not have otherwise. And now the county has achieved its goal of having more housing closer to Metro, which is another secondary goal, as well as more housing that is more attainable to a broader cross-section of the population. So there's, a number of questions were generated about this in several different forums. I mean, in a lot of areas, first it was a discussion of would this actually generate affordable housing? Then I mentioned, it was acknowledged that they don't foresee missing middle housing as something to address affordable housing. It's more the aspect of the attainable housing that I mentioned. But other concerns were just around things like infrastructure, right? Putting more units of housing, more densely populated in our 60 zones. Are the roadways sufficient? Are the stormwater management systems sufficient? Is parking sufficient? And in last week's planning board review of this, the planning board members, they had several different, very vocal feelings about it. Achieving attainable housing was something strongly vocalized by, I think, most every member of the planning board. But as was the idea that they're not really interested in some of the issues around items such as parking. In fact, one of the recommendations that I'll go to here is that they recommended transmitting their comments, right, to the county council for the county council's review before their public hearing. And I think that I said the 4th, it's actually the 11th. So pardon that typo, that's from a different meeting. But one of the things that they also talked about is that they don't think the county council needs to take up any considerations around parking. They are very, very much in favor of missing middle housing. But their comments also kind of go back to missing middle housing on its own. This CTA, well, as great and well-intentioned as it is just one piece of a larger, more holistic planning approach that Thrive Montgomery 2050 tries to take on. And so their comments are more or less, yes, we should be striving for missing middle housing, but we should be striving for it in context with all of the other things that go into a holistic planning document. And in a way, in my opinion, we're kind of signaling to the council to ask that they allow the remaining time and public meetings on Thrive Montgomery 2050 to conclude prior to taking up the ZTA 2007. So I'll leave you with this on 2007. This was the press release just the other day from that meeting. The 5 bullet points along the left-hand side, those are the comments from the planning board, kind of a summary that they plan to transmit to the county council. But you'll see at the bottom what I was talking about, that these parking minimums should be completely removed for new housing within 1 mile of the metro. Now, I keep saying this radius of 1 mile or a half mile of the metro, and I'm sure there are some very astute residents who are saying, well, this doesn't affect the town of Kensington because we are not within 1 mile of metro. But the reality is, one of their other comments that was brought up is they believe that if the ZTA is to go forward, the other thing the county council should do is adopt more or less the approach that Thrive Montgomery takes, which is to expand the included properties to those around Metro line stations, current and planned BRT station, and MARC stations. Their whole idea is all of those are part of that connected transit corridor. And so if you're going to look at missing middle housing, it should be, within a radius around all modes of transit. And if adopted, right, just like within Thrive Montgomery, Kensington is smack dab right around our MARC station. This would very quickly affect us directly. They also talked about expanding it to the R40 zones and R90 zones, and to expand it beyond just duplexes and townhouses to triplexes and quadplexes and other small multifamily housing units, again, so that they are within, as long as they're within the size and conformity of the neighborhood. So any questions so far on any of that? Great. So how do these ZTAs affect Kensington? So Kensington does not have our own zoning authority, right? That is still resides within Montgomery County. Kensington, we do have certain land use ordinances, right? You've heard it before, things like setbacks. We can control our setbacks because we make them more restrictive than what the county provides for, and we're allowed to do that under our charter as a municipality. The ZTAs are used to change specific aspects of zoning countywide, but when that happens, obviously, that means it applies to Kensington as well. And these ZTAs, as we have learned, they also supersede our sector plan. So this has been an area that we've historically, seen some issues with as developments have come forward. The sector plan, which the town spent many years, working through and finally adopting in 2012, and which we have been using as our, guide for redevelopment since that date, already has some problems with some ZTAs that are on the books. One is the 2019 one or 2018 one on moderately priced dwelling units. And the point is, and I'll show you the slide on it in a second, when a ZTA passes, it will supersede that which we have already adopted in our sector plan. So all of the hard work and the energy and the compromise and to come up with densities, to come up with the FAR, to come up with the height limitations, those can be broken by ZTAs. That's why ZTAs, have such a potential impact on the town. It kind of, it strips away that which we work so hard to achieve within a sector plan. So 2 previous ZTAs that have come up on the listserv recently, so I just wanted to touch on them. One was from 2019. It was ZTA 19-01. This was for accessory dwelling units, or what are referred to as ADUs. And what ZTA 1901 did was it allows for attached and detached accessory dwelling units within the county. So an attached ADU might be like a basement apartment, a garden apartment, an in-law apartment, those things that are still within the envelope of your house, but they have a private entrance, they have a private kitchen, they're completely separated. And so that's now still considered an ADU, but it's an attached ADU. It could also be, an above a garage apartment. That's an attached ADU. A detached ADU is, if you have sufficient space, you could actually build an outbuilding on your property, a smaller building, generally to the rear of your property, that could then be a housing unit. And there are rules within the ZTA of where it's located and how big it can be and setbacks, and all those things are relative to the size of the primary house. So that's within that ZTA, but obviously what it can do is in an R60 zone where you used to have 1 housing unit, you can quickly have 2 housing units, right? You can add another livable space, either attached to the house or detached to the house. And obviously some of the things from missing middle housing, some of the same concerns were voiced at that time, right? Stormwater management, parking, access, congestion, those same types of things were vocalized during that time. So
Hunter, I think these were, Hans Reamer used these more as affordable housing than he did for obtainable housing.
yeah, and I don't know how to best describe how I feel about that, but the idea was if one built an ADU in their backyard, that would be a smaller unit of housing that could be then rented for, say, at a much lower rate, creating some level of affordable housing. There hasn't been a whole lot of units of ADUs built in the county so far, but there is
Had
concern
one in
about-
Kensington recently.
One in Kensington and one there's an application for that we are aware of. But the other reality is, there's concerns about whether this really can obtain affordable housing. Certainly another unit of housing, but there's a lot of discussion about what the cost to create that level of housing, and is there incentive for people to offer it at an affordable rate other than the market rate, right? So if, let's say, the market rate for a rental in Kensington is $900 a month for a 1-bedroom unit, and you've created a 1-bedroom unit, why would you rent it for less than $900 a month if the market would bear that? So there's still more to be learned about this ZTA and whether or not it will truly achieve a scale of housing units or affordability. But it came up in 2019 and it passed. It is currently, part of the zoning law now. The other one was ZTA 2018-06. This is one that's considered or called the moderately priced dwelling units. If you come to a DRB meeting, you will hear us talk about MPDUs. That's what a moderately priced dwelling unit is. The intent of this ZTA, as I move my little screens, is it's a type of housing where the unit price, what you pay for that housing, is tied to the income of the occupant and the and certain income levels, certain federal income levels or local income levels. So this is where we talk more about affordable housing, right? The actual what the occupant is charged is tied to what they actually make. how it impacts the town is that under ZTA 1806, it allows additional density bonuses to developers who provide greater than the 12.5% minimum MPDUs required by the county. So when a new development comes out, initially the requirement was that they must provide 12.5% MPDUs. But if they were to provide greater than the minimum in a kind of percentage back and forth, the percentage greater than the minimum they provide, they can get an additional density. And that additional density means that they can add additional height to their building, right? Because usually you maximize the density you have on your site up to your height limit. When you get additional density in 12-foot increments, you can add it to your building. And we saw this at one point with a development in town. This would be the Kensington Manor project that is on Knowles Avenue. They were anticipating providing quite a large number of MPDUs. Initially they were talking upwards of 75% MPDUs. And in exchange, they were going to get additional density. And that additional density, they were proposing buildings in excess of our sector plan height limits for that block. And through the public process, what we did at the DRB is, we love the idea of the additional MPDUs. The idea of affordable housing and how important it is to the county was extremely important to us. But so was us keeping our sector plan limitations intact. And we worked with that developer to understand that the importance of the height limit that we saw in the sector plan for that area of the town center where they were proposing the development. And through working through the DRB process, what they were willing to do was reduce the overall height of their building from 6 stories to 5 to make it uniform to the Kensington sector plan and bring it within the height limitations. And they're still able to achieve, I think they're even closer to 100% MPDUs. So this is where, working through the public process is a very, very, very beneficial thing. We worked to advocate for the fact that it had nothing to do with affordable housing. It, in our mind, was the conformity to the surrounding buildings, the fact that it backed onto townhouses, and the fact that there is a plan that we had put blood, sweat, and tears into through the sector plan to ensure that we had certain heights and densities that met the size and scope of a town that we wanted to build. We were grateful through that process that the developer agreed. They reduced the overall scale of their plan, even though through the MPDU process they could have gone to planning with a larger building. We met in the middle. They were able to reduce that building, and ultimately they moved on to approval with that design. But that same use case for the ZTA still hangs over our sector plan. Other areas that are up for redevelopment, this idea of ZTAs, well, it may meet a political goal of, say, the county council. It kind of throws the municipalities under the bus, right? Our sector plan is not as set in stone as I think a lot of people believe it is. So that's why these ZTAs, can have potentially such a large impact on the town. So I went through all of this as an update just to what's going on with Thrive Montgomery 2050 and to the current ZTA 20-07 that the planning board just reviewed. But I leave it with some thoughts, which are open for discussion. Should we review and or amend our ordinances to look at things, not just setbacks, right? Are our setbacks appropriate as written right now? Do we want to look at things like lot coverage or building heights? There's things that other municipalities do, like Garrett Park, for instance. They do have lot coverage as part of their ordinance. And they set a maximum as to what can be the maximum build out on an individual lot. The other conversation is, should the town review what other municipalities have done to achieve municipality zoning authority? So there are a handful of municipalities within Montgomery County that actually have a zoning authority and control for themselves. We do not, we rely on the county right now for that, but is it, worthy of discussion and review to figure out first, what did it take those municipalities to achieve the zoning authority? And also, what does it take operationally for those municipalities to maintain and operate their municipal zoning authority? So I leave that open to the floor for questions or comments.
Thank you, Connor. Council, do you all have any questions with the presentation? Everybody understand?
If no one's going to go, I'll just thank Connor for the presentation. Extremely informative, and I guess my only question and then a comment. My question is, the two discussion points you put up there were about amending our ordinances with respect to certain things related to zoning. If further ZTAs were passed, would they also supersede if we made those amendments? And then the second is that I think, studying the issue and seeing what other municipalities have done, I don't see any harm in that. I think that would be a good thing to follow through with, unless someone who's attending the meeting knows that answer already and it's a quick response. I think it's good to see what that means for us, not just to get it, but like you said, the resources to maintain it. It obviously would put a lot more pressure on the town staff. We might have to hire more people to be able to do that, and so on.
I think you would have to create, your own little planning department. I know Poolsville has it. They're in the Agrit reserve area. So, and then Brookville, I think the entire town is designated historic. So, it's a little bit different than, they're not, probably could find a town in Prince George's County that's probably closer to our size and to the mix of commercial and residential more so than, and then of course Rockville and Gaithersburg are, huge. So I don't think we could compare ourselves with that either. But I think Connor and I talked about maybe reaching out to MML and getting some information about that. I think the most frustrating thing about these ZTAs is we have a plan. We're trying to follow the plan, and then some council member decides to, let's do this, and then all of a sudden, they change it, and we're not able to react to it as fast as we need to, or sometimes we don't even know it happened until we find out later after the fact. And it's getting pretty frustrating. And I know the other municipalities are the same, but I think reducing probably what you can build on the lot size is probably the first. We could do that fairly quickly. So Matt, do you have any thoughts on this, or?
I mean, we could change the setbacks. I mean, as long as we're not less restrictive than the county, I mean, that would be a good first start. John Gerson mentioned something in the chat that I think he's correct on. I don't know if we would be able to get zoning back from the county, but it's not something that we've actually gone and asked for before. The town gave it up many, many years ago. I think you mentioned Brookville, Poolsville, Laytonsville, Rockville, Gaithersburg.
Does Laytonsville have it too? I didn't think they did.
I think it's Laytonsville. Definitely Rockville and Gaithersburg.
Yeah, definitely. They're the ones that are always talked about. We never at our meetings do we ever talk about the other smaller towns, so I forgot about them.
But there's the smaller items that we can do just through ordinance changes. Setbacks, we could manage quickly. It would be a long discussion with county to try to get our zoning back. And there obviously is going to be a financial implication of that as too. We'll need a planning department, a planning commission, staff. So.
And I throw it out there for discussion, but realizing that it may ultimately mean, we could very quickly come up with the idea that it's just not achievable, right? To John Gerson's point, I'd heard before that we gave it up and likely would not get it back. But we also gave it up and you guys keep changing the rules out from underneath us. And at the very least, it'd be worthy of a discussion with whether it's county council members or the county executive. I am realistic, though, that the requirements to then maintaining and operating it might just be cost prohibitive. So it may be our ordinances that are more the levers that we have. To my point, Garrett Park has lot coverage. In the meeting with planning, I believe it was Jeffrey Zients who mentioned, don't hold me to that name, but the county, Matt, their building height in the R60 is like 35 feet.
Correct. So we follow the R60 guidelines from the county, 35 feet in height. Lot coverage is about 35%. Rear and front setbacks, we follow the county, and then where we differ are the side yard setbacks.
So, I guess worthy of discussion is whether those, other than the side yards, if we want to adopt any ordinances that are more restrictive. But then to that point, what happens with a ZTA? If it's adopted in Thrive Montgomery, that's a planning document. It's not law, it's a planning document. But if it's adopted in a ZTA, Matt, and they adopt something around missing middle housing that talks to lot coverage, density, heights, sizes, setbacks, that would still trump our ordinances, correct?
Not necessarily. My understanding is that we can, as long as we're more restrictive than what the county-based zoning is. So, and that's kind of what came up with the ADU a number of years ago. The other down county municipalities were changing their regulations to prohibit ADUs. Our council took no position at the time, but there's ways that the town could prevent this through our own code that would block this CTA from taking effect. The problem is that if they keep having ZTAs like they have the last few years, we're put in a position where we might be playing catch up like we have on a number of different issues, with regards to accessory structures and so forth.
And there were actually quite a few voices that wanted accessory structures. I mean, you have to be careful too with the setbacks because especially on the north side, the lots are so narrow. If you were to make it even more restrictive, I mean, it could make it so difficult to redo your house. I mean, we have to be careful of that because there are unintended consequences on these things. So, I mean, you really have to look carefully. I mean, and that's part of the problem with the ZTA that's being proposed is there's a lot of unintended consequences that just haven't really been thought out. Yet it could easily become law and then but I'll tell you the most frustrating thing is, and that is both the county council and the planning board, you talk about schools, parking, traffic, and stormwater management, they just poo-poo it. It's like, those are things they don't want to hear. They don't want to hear those concerns. They're just immediately dismissed. And I get it because that's always what people bring up. So, but they are concerns. I mean, we have streets that are very narrow. We have streets where, like Frederick Avenue, where you can only park on one side. And you start adding, if this had been in place, the houses that were built on Frederick Avenue, you could easily have had a triplex. Instead of 2 single-family homes, you could have had a home right in the middle and had a triplex. And maybe that's okay, but I don't think it should be shoved down our throats. I don't like that. So, I think Darren, you and I and Connor sat in for the whole planning meeting. I kind of got the impression that they're hoping that the county council will just shelve this. Is that what you felt?
Yeah, I think the suggestion is that it ought to be folded back into the comprehensive Thrive Montgomery rather than being dealt with individually because there were too many outstanding issues for it.
Connor, was that your feeling? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Darren. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I mean, this just, I think echoes a lot of what Connor said, is that we spent all this time with the 2012 sector plan looking at heights and densities and specifically a transition to the residential neighborhood. So we were introducing residential into the commercial sector. And then we created the CRT and CRN and required step downs to the neighborhoods. And now ZA radically disrupt our residential neighborhoods. And so what we thought was a bargain, what we thought was a balanced approach to preserving residential neighborhoods and promoting redevelopment of commercial neighborhoods is being revisited after we thought we had a deal. And so that's either going to affect our future willingness to cooperate in this or I don't know. I don't have the answer for how we address it, but I think we have to be mindful that what we think is settled and what we imagine a picture of the future of our town looking like can be radically altered by the county council.
Any other thoughts?
May I say something?
Sure. Do it. Oh, Steve, go ahead.
Hi. Hey, it's very interesting. You know, I think there are unintended consequences to the ZTA, and they're on display right here, right behind my house. If you want to take a look at the
accessory dwelling unit?
Yes, the auxiliary dwelling unit.
Accessory. It's accessory.
Accessory dwelling. Thank you. Okay. It nearly doubled the size of the house. It's huge. It's like a whole nother house back there. And, you know, I think maybe the intention is to have your sick mother or mother-in-law, you know, be in your house. Well, that's not what this is. This is doubling the size of the house. It's completely taken up just about every square inch of footprint back there and is creating some problems. I think will create some problems. And I think it's an unintended consequence. What you need to imagine is every house that's similar to that is probably going to be a target by developers or people looking to make a profit of expanding the value of their house. You take a house, Connor, you talked about the economics of it. You know, it's going to make great economic sense. The problem is it's just going to pack a lot of housing in a place where it wasn't intended. And it defeats the purpose, not only the sector plan, but, you know, the original look and feel and culture of Kensington. It's what makes us unique. And, people need to just go look at the Unity Carroll Place. Now, I realize you cannot walk on the property, but what you can do is walk down my driveway at 10205 Connecticut Avenue. You're all welcome to do it without my permission, without knocking on the door. Go down the driveway, walk behind the garage, and take a look. And get a sense of what's involved. And I think if you sort of multiply that around the town, I would expect many of you may be horrified. So I think it's very important that the town fight back. I think do whatever measures they can do politically or otherwise. I'm a great believer in the vote and in making noise. But I also think that there may be other alternatives to building our own planning department. I would guess, maybe it's a possibility, that we could join forces with other small towns like Garrett Park. And at some, you know, obviously we'd have to, you know, provide some funds to do this, but to expand their responsibilities into our area. And I think this is a threat to many communities, what's going on. And I think the unilateral, I don't want to say defeat, but basically going away from the sector plan, which was very hard work, is not only wrong, it really defeats the entire intention of the community. It's why we live here. And it's going, it's potentially could be destroyed by kind of people that are just looking to make a profit.
Right.
So anyway, I'm ready for the fight. Again, I live at 10205 Connecticut Avenue. You're welcome to inspect the ZTA at your convenience. Just be careful when you walk behind the garage door because, well, I'll check my insurance, but I think it's in pretty good shape. So
Okay,
be careful.
good. Well, we are in, the coalition that the town has joined includes Garrett Park as well as the Chevy Chases and Chevy Chase View. And so we all have the concern.
Exactly.
I think everybody has seen, residential streets where you may have a duplex. A lot of these are in the much older neighborhoods, or you see maybe a house that has been converted to 4 apartments. You see that a lot in DC. If you go on the real estate page, you can, somebody's taken a large house and they've made apartments. So, this is the trend that the county is committed to. So we have to determine, in our town, do we want to, and this is not affordable housing. This is just providing that obtainable housing. So somebody who still makes quite a bit of money can still, now we've doubled our housing stock.
Right.
So, probably the best thing that we can do is looking at changing some of our codes or our ordinances so we can make it a little bit more difficult to do these things.
I agree. As far as the county is concerned, I'm reminded of the saying that a point in every direction is the same as no point at all. And I think the county planning is exactly that. They're schizophrenic when they talk about expanding housing, taking cars away, jamming people up into different areas. I think it's just misguided. And there's a point when you have to say, I'll get off my horse in a minute.
No.
But there's a point you have to say, is there enough people living in the county now? Are there enough businesses?
Yeah, I'm not sure we can.
That.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can say that. There is just so people know, there is a project up on Strathmore next to the Symphony townhouses that because St. Angela's has been sold. And that is going to be a mixed use development. It's like 15 acres. They've bought land from Holy Cross, and there's going to be, the townhouses. There's going to be single family homes, and there'll be apartments, and then there'll be another senior facility. So I know Garrett Park is concerned about that. It's not in their neighborhood, but that's coming. But the difference there is that's a new a new neighborhood that can now be created. It's kind of like the Kentlands, these planned communities. The problem with an already established community, I feel it's just harder to make it work and to fit in. I think that's the part.
And not to, also one of the things is that even though we have a well-defined historic district, the town has a historic character. So whether you're in the historic district or not, we all benefit from that, and we benefit from that level of density and stuff. And so that may be one of the rallying cries that we could use, to preserve what was intended and as a model for what was.
Right.
Anyway, I think I appreciate the time to talk, and I tend to talk a lot, but.
Okay, well, I'm going to cut you off because it's 9:05. There was a question on the chat regarding Councilmember Friedson. We have talked to him multiple times. He won't say exactly where he stands on the ZTA, but reading through, I get the impression he has some concerns about it. So that's but he won't say either way. Do we have any questions? I know we're anxious to get to number 5. We'd like to spend some time on the bicycle report, bicycle and pedestrian access.
Jack Gaffey's got his hand up.
Jack, sorry. Go ahead, Jack.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I agree with the well-spoken comments that Steve Cohen just said. If everybody does this, Middlesex, it will drastically change the character of the town.
Okay, thank you, Jack.
And just by the way, I walked by yesterday. You can get a pretty good view of it from the sidewalk on Carroll Place, looking from each side of the house.
Okay, well, I'm gonna actually, I've seen it from Carroll Place. I'm gonna walk down Steve's driveway, hopefully tomorrow. So I would just encourage people on the call to just stay engaged. You can go to the planning department's website and view more documents. And you could actually go to missingmiddle.com if you want to learn more about what missing middle housing is. The council is going to, we're signing on with a letter to, with this coalition to the county council. It's going out tomorrow. And so it's pretty much the same letter that we sent to the planning department, but it's, and we're, there's also people in the coalition who will be testifying. And we can't, we're not going to be able to stop this because this is really the direction that the county council and the planning department are going in. But I think our job is to going to figure out a way of changing some of our own authority, our zoning, I guess the ordinance, to try to make it a little bit more difficult.
I'm a veteran of Warner Circle, and I've seen firsthand the impact that political power has. And I wonder whether a citizens group guided by the county council, by the town council, can really have some impact. And I think that political power is very important. And I think that a lot of the people that got these ZTAs got them because of political power. And I think there needs to be an opposing view. And I think that speaks volumes in terms of the votes, political influence, and being noisy. I'm a squeaky wheel kind of guy. And I guess I would just cast out the idea, not to lead it, but to plant the seed that there needs to be a similar type of effort to sort of preserve what we have here.
And I understand that. I think there are, I mean, I live in a multifamily house. I live in townhouse, but I am at the edge of the R60 and to me, that's, especially when you have an older neighborhood, that really works because we're now the buffer between the housing, single family housing and the commercial. So I'm closer to Knoll Station than everybody else. So I can get my carry out much faster than Nate can. But so that works, but I have concerns about putting multifamily housing down in the middle of Washington Street. It just doesn't,
I think we have to find the common denominator that brings the most momentum to the argument. And there's a little piece of this puzzle that affects everybody. And we need to find all those pieces of puzzle, all those puzzle pieces, and
right,
put them together. And you know, it's not. I hesitated to even talk about the historic district because I think that tends to isolate people. And what we need to do is bring people together that we're all facing a common purpose and a problem that we all see every day. And the county is doing zero to ameliorate it. They're doing everything to aggravate it. And like I said, my guess is it's about political power and who listens to who. And
right.
Big voice.
Well, I think we're going to continue on this journey, and we hope that residents will stay engaged. And again, we're putting out a journal at the end of the month, and Connor will be preparing some more information for those who weren't on the meeting today. Connor, did you want to, just to close this out, do you want to just give any updates that you may have on 10619 Connecticut?
10619 Connecticut is the Huggins property. It's where Hawkins Market is now. I had a chance to talk with the property owner again last week. There's a couple of points that they're just working through with the county. They were hoping to get it done in this time frame, let me restate that. This week is the time frame. They're hoping to get those couple of things resolved. Once they have those couple of things resolved, it has to do with things that will impact their design, right? So how cars move through things, egress, things like that. So they don't want to come before the DRB until they can figure out what the county is asking them to do, and they're permitted to do. But once they do, they are planning to bring that project before the DRB. So the estimates that we talked about were, again, about a month, maybe at the end of February, looks like maybe the very early part of March. If I know more by the time the journal is ready, or at least my article needs to be in for publication, I will update it, as well as the other projects that have been reviewed by the DRB recently. So, and when I say recently, in the last year, just those things that are in the development process, Darren and I are working on whatever the most common current update is for each of those projects, and we will have that in the journal article as well. So it'll be kind of a DRB bonanza. So please, when it hits your mailbox, open it and read it, because all of those updates will be there.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot in the journal, because all the committees that we have started, now finally have gotten some reports. So, all right, thank you all for the discussion, and let's move on. Nate, number 5, pedestrian and bicycle access. Oh, get another.
Hold on.
You're in
your seats,
competition.
Everybody, we got a third PowerPoint of the evening.
Yay!
Maybe a record, huh?
I think so.
So I promise not to be quite as long as Connor, but
Careful there, Nate. I object to everything Nate's about to say.
Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna ask Anne-Marie Turner also to join me here. We're gonna be trading off on a quick presentation to describe the process and some of the findings, the key findings behind a working group that we established back in the fall on what we called the Pedestrian and Bicycling Access and Safety Working Group. So this is we submitted a report about a week ago to the mayor and the town council that went through the key recommendations, and we're gonna highlight them for the benefit of those who are tuned into the meeting who may not have had the chance to read it. So first, I want to thank all of the resident participants, the volunteers from the town who were part of this group over the last few months. They're listed here. I know many of you are on the call, so I want to personally say thank you, and also on behalf of the town, thank you again. And then also in particular, thanking Emery, the co-chair of the working group, who's helped with this process. I'm going to talk about the process and the inputs, how we got the inputs into the plan, or into the report, excuse me. And then Emery and I are going to split the key recommendations, and then open it up for some discussion and talk about what we think should be some of the next steps. All right, so as I alluded to, we started this back in September of 2020. We met monthly, about 5 meetings, I think it was, to discuss what the priorities should be for improving bicycling and pedestrian access and safety throughout the town. We solicited input from the residents who wanted to be a part of this through the town journal, through the listserv, and we came up with a nice critical mass of about 10, as you saw on the previous slide, 10 to 12 people. The first thing that we set out to do was to go through how we were going to prioritize what we would do for ranking different recommendations. So we created a prioritization spreadsheet, which we've shared in the report as one of the annexes. And the next thing was really actually to hit the pavement and do a walking and bicycling audit of the entire town. So physically walking out there, dividing up across the 10 of us or so, and walking through every street, every intersection, with a checklist we created with the help of a county official who's doing a pedestrian master plan that we adapted to the town. And we did this for every single street in the town, and took note of what the pedestrian and bicycling experience was. And basically it serves as a baseline, and we identified physical infrastructure improvements that could be made. And that's also, as we'll show you in the recommendations, that's also one of the annexes of the report. So how do we get the input? Well, in addition to doing the walkability and bicycling audit, we reviewed plans and documents. We attended webinars like the Walktober webinars that were sponsored by the state of Maryland. We did interviews with some key technical staff within departments like the Montgomery County Department of Transportation. We did independent research. And then some of it was also based on our own opinions and professional views. We have quite a skill set of people who are well versed in these topics represented on the working group. So now I'm going to jump to the recommendations. We divided them into two buckets. The first bucket was those recommendations that had an approaching immediate deadline. So all of these recommendations, I should note, are the things that we identified as the things we can do immediately. Now there may be a certain sequencing and some trade-offs and discussion that need to take place on whether we can do them all at the same time, but these are things that we could move forward with right now. And we really sought to identify processes that were either ongoing or opportunities that we saw that existed already to kind of build from. So you'll see those as we lay these out. The first recommendation was to seek bicycle and pedestrian priority area designation. Here, it's listed as BIPPA. That's the way that the county designates it. There is a state designation that removes the I, basically. It's called a BPPA. In the report, we recommend state designation, but we can and should probably also try to get county designation. They're not always the same. Not all of these jurisdictions that are shown on the left of the screen there actually have the state designation too. But we have recommended seeking the state designation. And what this does is allows for basically a process to take place like what we just embarked upon with the working group. But imagine that on steroids, where it actually involves a formalized process where you're bringing in inputs from the different jurisdictions that have some say or decision making within that, as well as town representation through, for example, members of our working group participating in that process. That really hones in on attention on the town as wanting to have the goal of improving pedestrian and bicycling safety. So the second recommendation was to apply for the Montgomery County, or excuse me, the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments Transportation Land Use Connections Program. Now this grant can only be applied to by a member of the Council of Governments, which is Montgomery County in this case. We are not an official member, but we're represented by Montgomery County. And I sought the town council and approval or got their opinions on whether we can move forward with this before we actually submitted our report, because there was an abstract submission deadline. And with the green light, we moved forward and submitted an abstract for this program that we would partner to get some consulting services support for doing strategic analysis, either for planning and or engineering designs for whatever specific issue we wanted to study. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the issue that we put in the abstract that we plan to submit for the full grant proposal on the next slide. And then the third recommendation here on immediate actions recommended that have deadlines that we're approaching or are approaching is to work with the Department of Transportation in the county on expected improvements that they're going to be making along the east side of the Summit Avenue leading up to Knowles on sidewalk and bicycling enhancements. It's in the master plan to do that for the bicycling master plan. And it's also been a request by the Parkwood Association to do improvements along that stretch. And the county has signaled its support to do that. So our recommendations are about aligning, making sure, this links back to the variance discussion, making sure that the homeowners along that stretch are incorporated into that conversation, and also that any developments like the ones on Knowles Avenue, that they're coordinated with any improvements that happen there. So that was the bucket with clear deadlines approaching. Now we're going to move to those that don't have necessarily any specific deadline, but we would say are, we kind of deem these also priorities and immediate actions that could move forward. The first is to, if you look on the right of the screen there, you'll see the map that we did for the for the auditing process. And we've listed here some of the key infrastructure improvements that some of them could, you could just kind of have the town staff or Matt just go and the crew go and actually fix some sidewalks, put up the signs that might be knocked down and so on. Others take a little bit more deliberation amongst the residents affected. For example, if there was to add a sidewalk in a stretch that doesn't have it, but they're all listed in the annex on that sheet. We recommend that they get priority. The fifth is to, amongst the working group, the number one issue that always came up, and this is not a surprise for everyone on the call, this is a perennial issue, is the challenges with walking and bicycling in and around Connecticut Avenue. So we call this the Connecticut Avenue corridor. We feel that there is an opportunity, or perhaps this report can shed light and give it additional life to the conversation to really hone in and try to fix this once and for all, or at least significantly improve the pedestrian and bicycling experience along this corridor. So what I alluded to in the last slide about the TLC grant with COG, we're suggesting that that this corridor be the topic of study for that analysis, for how we can make tangible, innovative, but workable solutions along that corridor for making it be able to accommodate what is coming with new development, the opportunities that we have to improve walking and bicycling in and between town to businesses and so forth. The sixth recommendation is to pursue bicycling and walking enhancements to Kensington Parkway, both within the incorporated town limits that we control for that road, but also linking to those outside of our jurisdiction, the county-owned part of the road. You'll all have received a postcard in the mail where it describes the process that the county has embarked upon to add improvements that are planned or called for in the bicycling master plan to that stretch that is within the jurisdiction of MCDOT as a result of the work that WSSC is doing there as they pave over the ongoing repairs and additions to the piping network. One of the working group members, Delegate Carr, has pushed or requested WSSC to consider making those improvements now while they have the opportunity. And this is what I'm talking about and trying to link up with ongoing processes and really just take advantage of them and make sure that we're pushing and advocating for these improvements. So the report suggests that we make the corresponding improvements along our stretch of Kensington Parkway for whatever basically is decided upon for the improvements in the unincorporated part of that stretch. So I'm going to hand it over to Anne-Marie now to go through the remaining recommendations. Just tell me when to change your screen, please. Yes, I heard a question coming back.
Nate, I was just going to ask a question. It's Tracy on number 6. So were you suggesting that we wait to see what they do on the section of Kensington Parkway outside the town, and then we try to match it up on our side?
I would say so. We did not note that specifically in the report because we hadn't received the notice of the hearing yet. Okay. The public hearing. So they're imminent, and I would suggest, Anne-Marie and others on the call might have a different opinion, but I would suggest probably worth waiting since they're going to make them just see what they're going to do. And then if it's appropriate for that part of the stretch, then we would want to match them, I would assume.
Okay. It sounds like probably striping and that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, I think we'd want to see, at least see their design in order to make sure that whatever we put in is continuous.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'd encourage town members and residents to participate in that survey because there are very different options they're suggesting. So that's the last I'll say on that. And I'll hand over to you, Anne-Marie. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Anne-Marie. Here's the next slide. So I'm just going to go through a few more of the recommendations that came out of our initial work. Another thing that garnered a lot of attention was the pedestrian safety at the Metropolitan Avenue intersections, particularly near the MARC station. So whether that be looking at, retaining an all-way stop or working with state highway to put in a hawk signal, or, well, probably not hawk. I guess they call it the mini hawk. I know it as a RRFB, like a flashing walk sign at the MARC station, or other enhancements so that Metropolitan Avenue could be a pleasant place to walk and cross. Another recommendation that came out of the report was looking into whether we could consider hosting a Capitol bike share station or a corral for dockless vehicles, so that we can have some micro mobility within the town. As it is now, there's, those kind of resources in Wheaton, and then again, towards Strathmore, but the town is sort of in this dead space between the two of them. So we wanted to explore that as well. I think Nate's done some good work talking to the county about that. And the costs, we could get into that, but we can do it later. Also, another thing was to improve the crossings on Knowles Avenue. As we know, like the crossing at Dietrich is extremely challenging, and perhaps more so now that there's kind of a sightline issue. And so that's something that we want to continue to kind of focus on as development happens, to make sure that Knowles Avenue is a pleasant and pedestrian-oriented corridor. Another thing is, right now, one of the major problems, in the sector plan, and, we live it every day, is that Kensington is divided by Connecticut, and we're divided by the rail line. So, seeking another connection across the MARC train tracks. And, maybe that happens in conjunction with, MDOT and transit, or maybe that happens in another way, but we just want to continue to push for connecting the test sectors of the town. And then I think we'll go to the next one. Oh yeah. Also, I've heard that, we understand that there might be some interest in pursuing a road diet on northbound University Avenue. The capacity is not needed on that street, therefore, and it's also part of the Montgomery County bicycle master plan. So if we're able to work with the county to narrow the street, hopefully it'll help add pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and gives us opportunities to make that a more walkable and livable space along University Boulevard. Another thing that came out of our discussions is pedestrian scale street lighting. It's particularly in the commercial corridors. It really does create an environment that is walkable and enjoyable and livable when done properly. And then the last thing that we talked a little bit about is reducing speed limits, whether that be, along Connecticut Avenue. I don't know that, so there's a process that State Highway would have to go through, but, we can continue to work with State Highway on their roads and with Montgomery County on Montgomery County roads. There is a kind of a process to go through. So it's not necessarily just as simple as doing it by ordinance, although the district did do it by ordinance recently. But that's something else we can continue to develop as we move on with the working group. And that's
okay, great. Thanks, Emery. So I guess, we've gotten the green light to move forward before on the first two recommendations. So we're following up with the county on those and coordinating with them. I guess the questions for discussion are just, to hear we'd love to hear the feedback from the town on this, and obviously including the residents. And we think that there is more work to do, especially with putting the TLC grant together and the bicycling and pedestrian priority area designation application together. Jumping down to the last bullet there, we may need some additional people to help with that. I'm sure we'll be enlisting Matt and the staff to support with that, because I think it's a little bit involved of a process. But we do plan to continue to refine the prioritization spreadsheet. We think there's improvements to be made on how we do the prioritization and formulate that as a tool for the town to use, I guess in perpetuity. But then we do hope also to do iterative updates to the walk audits, to do it at different times of the day, do it on different days of the week, different seasons and so on, maybe even doing it at, in the evening, for example. So, the work will continue. For the working group members on the Zoom call here, I don't want to scare you and say that it's necessarily going to be every month, but there is work ahead, especially in the next couple months, and we'll keep at it. But we look forward to hearing your feedback.
Good, thank you. Just a quick question, would any of these, the PowerPoint and the PowerPoint for, that Connor did, if you wanted to, Carrie Ann can embed them in your articles, so that people could go to those, if you want, when we send out the electronic version of the journal. Keep that in mind, if any of those PowerPoints would be helpful to include in your article. She can post them on the website and link it for the electronic versions.
Yeah, and I'm happy to, Matt, to send it in if we want to put it up on a link for the minutes of the meeting as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that was excellent. Thank you. Is any questions from the council on the presentation?
Couple thoughts.
Well, go ahead, Connor.
I shared a few of these with Nate, but I wanted to bring them up with the group. First, just a big thanks. The report was wonderful. It seemed weird to say thank you for sending me a 15-page document, but I really, really did enjoy reading it. And there's just a couple of things that jumped out that I want to make sure are captured and by the working group as you're working forward towards some of these, and some are near and dear to my heart. So we're going to start with number 7, which is the St. Paul Street Metropolitan Avenue improvements. So as of right now, we have gotten from SHA an agreement that they would install 2 rectangular rapid flashing beacons, the RRFBs, one at Metropolitan in St. Paul and one at Metropolitan in Wheatley. And the timing of that and when they're going to install it is to try and do it when the roads are already going to be torn up, possibly with the Moderna project. There are some cost implications. It's not off the radar, but we do have to kind of keep on them. But what we vocalized to them since that 4-way or all-way stop went in at St. Paul and Metropolitan is this is now providing the traffic calming that we actually wanted to see. Because even when the pedestrian isn't present, it's creating a stop point somewhere between, way out in Capitol View Park, and then the next one down is all the way at Connecticut Avenue or Pliers Mill. So this is a nice area where it just brings the traffic to a stop, and it's just slowing down that whole corridor. But ultimately what it's really doing is, what I'm finally seeing is a safer place for people to cross to get to the mark. But what I don't want to see happen, I want to fight for the all-way stop, but I don't want to see State Highway lose visibility of the RRFB still at Wheatley. That is still needed. It's got a different, that intersection has different lines of sight. It's got its own issues. And I just don't want SHA to think that we're asking for one and not the other, right? I want both of those. I think your idea of some sort of control up at the very confusing intersection of Carroll Place, Pliers Mill, and Metropolitan would also be helpful, because that is also a bit of a jungle for pedestrians to traverse when they're coming from the residential side and trying to get to, say, 7-Eleven or Baskin Robbins. Your recommendation to, the Kensington Crossing potential, development at 10619 Connecticut, I got it. Darren and I will take that up in DRB when that project comes before us. Let me just look through the rest of my notes here. Page 7. I'll come back to dock biking in a second. And speed, but I'm gonna, Darren, I assume you're gonna talk about speed. Is that one of your, I'll defer to you. On bikes, the last time we kind of talked about this was dockless versus docked. I've been in favor of docked. I think they work great. I'm not in favor of dockless based on what I've seen here in Arlington County where I work, specifically in Crystal City. It just creates such a mess. I was educated today by Nate about this corralling concept that was not presented the last time they presented the pilot. So I'd like to keep an open mind about the corral and learn more about that. But just dockless biking, from what I've just seen, how it's been implemented in other jurisdictions, just leads to urban litter on sidewalks. And my big concern is, one, safety, two, it congesting sidewalks. You know, in residential areas, there's a way to get around, but on Howard Avenue, we have a sidewalk on one side of the street, and the only other option is actually going into the roadway. And if a merchant wants that bike removed, they're not going to call the county and they're not going to call Capital Bike Share, right? They're going to call Matt, and they're going to expect that the town crew handle this. And that's some of the reasons why I haven't been a big favor of the bike or the dockless bikes. But you know, Nate, whatever you can do to educate us on the corrals, I'm all ears.
You want me to do that now?
Oh, we do have a long agenda, so
Yeah.
I mean, we still have quite a few things to get through. Not to cut you off, but if it's a short.
I was going to suggest that I think this merits this specific recommendation merits a longer discussion, maybe at a future council meeting, because there are trade-offs and there's issues between like how much cost the town wants to take on, what the county is willing to support, and then how much we want to promote bicycling within the town. I think that is, you know, especially these new developments, right? So I'd be willing to say, let's push that for a longer discussion at another council meeting. But Emery, I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, I think that it's a longer discussion because there's like financial implications and yeah. I mean, all of these things are you know, each of these topics could be its own discussion. And there's, so we were just trying to give an overview.
And it could be that you can hold a meeting separately that's open to the public, or, you know, rather than just, I mean, all the meetings are open to the public, but push it more out that, you know, you are encouraging for people to log on. So you might want to do a future meeting that way. Darren, did you want to talk about the speed?
Well, just really quickly, and partly, I think this working group has a lot of overlap with the traffic committee and some overlap with the development review board. So I think it's great that we hold these discussions so that we understand what we're all doing. Relative to the traffic committee, we bought one traffic speed sign, a radar speed sign that tells people their speeds, and so I think it's been great along Howard. I could see it being used on Metropolitan and Knowles, maybe just because I think that knowing your speed and seeing things flash at you can help bring the speeds down. So I just want you guys to realize that that's a resource, and where we deploy it is there. I'm all in favor of the lowering the speed limits. Connor and I put that out on the listserv without knowing that you guys were already working on it. So I think you're going to find a lot of support from the council and traffic committee on that. To the DRB overlap, we understand that the sidewalk in front of Wine and Company, I mean, it's there. It will be next to the road forever. And some people view that as a missed opportunity to have moved it back, but the way that project was developed, it wasn't an opportunity. So one of the things that we have pushed the developer, who's the same developer next door on the flats, is to provide a pedestrian alternative to walking along Knowles, to being walking along the backside of Wine and Company and through the project at the flats, if you're trying to get from Dietrich to Summit. You know, with lights, sort of like a Bethesda Road type pedestrian opportunity. It's something that, you know, if you guys support it, hey, weigh in, because that's what we're already pushing him for, because I think it's a great alternative to walking right next to the traffic. And last, on the bike lane on Kensington Parkway, I have no problem with it. I think it's a great idea to put it in when it's convenient. But I think as a town, we ought to be either pro bike lane or not. And it irritates me when I hear people setting up claims about a bike lane on Knowles, in front of 4,000 Knowles, as an orphan bike lane or a bike lane to nowhere, when it just happens to be the first segment of what we hope will be an eventual continuous bike lane from Knowles down at Beach all the way to Connecticut. So I think our support for bike lanes can't be situational. It ought to be, we support bike lanes. So that's all I have as far as the report. I think you guys did a great job, and I think there's a lot to support in it.
That's great. Thanks. Darren, can I follow up with you offline about your recommendation on Knowles Avenue? I didn't, I wasn't aware of that, but maybe you can give us some specific language that we can add to the report.
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, I had somebody in the chat and that wanted to speak, Jennifer Burke, although I don't think you're Jennifer, but
No, that's my wife. I'm Vince. Pleasure to meet you
okay.
all.
Vince, if you could just give your street address.
Sure, 9918 Kensington Parkway. So I'm
That's
just
fine.
outside the town limits there.
That's fine.
And admittedly, I just learned about the proposal for the infrastructure improvements along Kensington Parkway there. So I have some study to do myself, but, just at first blush, I'm, very opposed, and I can go through my thinking quickly. And like I said, have some stuff to learn as well. So please respond if there's something to counter it. But, the reason I live there in the first place is the natural setting there, across from the park reserve and the creek. And I did look, to Nathan's point, at some of the proposed sections. And I work in real estate development as my career, so I'm used to looking at those plans. And I would kind of caveat that it's one thing to look at it in plan view, but really consider what it might look like as built. And I think that would really scar the character of the natural setting there. And you're adding more impervious surface. They're going to add all the safety precautions with the yellow plastic bollards. They're talking about widening the roadway. All of a sudden it looks like a very different place, which is not what makes it attractive right now. And the impervious surface is an issue because drainage is already a problem there. They did make some improvements cutting down to the creek where that box culvert comes from Log Cabin Park under Kensington Parkway to the other side. They added some, I don't know what the technical names are for them, but it's kind of like a Y of this riprap or the large stone that creates some inlets going into the creek there to help with the drainage. But that rain we had 5 inches in an hour or so, whatever it was, in November, there was a lot of flooding in there. Actually had to rescue a woman. That car had been stranded in the flood and stopped. She was coming down from the senior home to cross Kensington Parkway there at Everett. And so flooding is an issue. So if you're going to add more impervious surface, they're going to add even more structure to create stormwater facilities to help take care of that. So I think it's going to drastically change how that looks and feels as you're coming through there. And to me, that's going to destroy that section and how it looks, and the reason that I live there. And I also find anywhere we have a bike path, I don't know what the numbers are, but I see the majority of bikers around that take themselves as more serious bikers opt not to use the path. So they're still going to be on the roadway. As you see along the bike paths on Beach Drive, most of the bikes go on the road instead of on the bike path lanes. So I'm not sure what problem, we're going to be solving there. And in fact, I've had, issue with some aggressive bikers coming through there. They fly down Kent. They love to take the hill coming down up from, by the Mormon Temple and fly down Kent, not stop at that stop line and rip left down Kensington Parkway and try and take all that speed. And there's a bunch of near accidents that I've witnessed, including my own dog and my own children. And, those bikers yelling at neighborhood folks walking around for not knowing the rules of, the road relative to bikes. So, between the parking issues that you guys may or may not be aware of with the senior facility up at the Kensington House, when they have events, they'll force people to park along Kensington Parkway. That all becomes filled. So what I'm seeing, my worry is, you're adding the structure for the bikes, you're encouraging a lot more activity there. You're adding, you already have a parking issue there. It creates, trash and other issues with those cars parking there. And it's kind of at odds with, the natural setting that it's designed to be. That's why it's a kind of a preserve in the first place. So, like I said, I need to study the options more, but the ideas of widening it and adding more asphalt or more concrete and adding all of the, safety indicators that go along with it is upsetting to me. So I don't know where you guys come down on that, but I wanted to register that opinion.
Just for the record, would be worried about the portion within the town of Kensington, which would be on street. So, I mean, we would connect with whatever the county is doing, but the portion that's discussed here would be like an on-street within the existing alignment. And the other thing to think about is sometimes, when you add a bike lane, depending on your street and the layout of the street, it actually has a traffic calming effect on the cars. In fact, a lot of safety studies show that, it's a weird thing. When you add a bicycle facility, you get more cyclists and you get more cycling accidents because you have more cyclists. But vehicular crashes and their severities often go down in conjunction with addition of bicycle facilities. So, this just for the record. So I think we're just, for the town, it would be, acting in tandem with whatever happens south of the town, which is not in our jurisdiction.
Understood. And I'm going to register that with the county as well. But since you guys were addressing it and recommending to pick that up, I wanted to pass that along. Because like I said, I think sometimes things look great in plan view, and then upon implementation, it's like, God, that's a lot more than we were hoping for there. And and I'm not sure there's a safety issue in that stretch. I haven't noticed that the cars tend to give the walkers and bikes and everybody good deference. I don't know, I walk down it every day, so I haven't seen much of a problem with vehicular and pedestrian bicycle conflict there, but you guys probably have the stats.
Well, you were invited to I'm assuming you got an invitation to the meeting for MC Dot.
Yeah, that's what prompted me to start following this and listen in here.
Okay, all right. Well, as Anne Marie said, we really only control what's within the town of Kensington. So so we will be watching as well to see what they plan to do.
Understood. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, Bridget, I'm sorry I skipped over you. Did you have anything on this topic? Was that a no? Okay.
Sorry, my mouse died. Yeah, no.
Okay, sorry. All right, I don't particularly care for checking on chats. I seem to miss some things.
John Gerson had.
Yeah, John, I think you're actually, I missed yours. Where did John go? There he is. Was yours on the CTA or on this issue?
On this issue.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'll be brief because I recognize it's almost 10 o'clock and there are other agenda items. I guess I wanted to share a few things related to this. First of all, I'm very appreciative of the significant amount of time and effort by the committee and continue to be struck by the expertise we have among our residents. People like Nate with a doctorate from Michigan in environment and sustainability, and Anne Marie, who I believe is a former New York City Chief of Highway Design, and a whole host of others. We really have a wealth of knowledge of people within our own town that is extraordinary. Couple other things I wanted to share. Often citizen-driven groups kind of struggle in terms of a disconnect between kind of like wish list and reality. For that reason, this report is, I think, great because the prioritization overview is encouraging. I mean, the initial focus on leveraging the state and COG partnership in terms of pursuing the TLC grant funding, and the audit of every single intersection in the town is invaluable because, to my knowledge, it's the first time we've really looked at every single intersection in terms of this issue. And so that's great. I'm looking forward to the next step in the process in terms of the resident feedback, because, I mean, for instance, do residents agree with replacing the existing sidewalk on Connecticut Avenue below Knowles to make it ADA compliant? Would that be a higher priority than improving Pliers Mill intersections at Metropolitan? Or how would we come up with $75,000, which is the initial cost for the capital bike share station, and so forth? I think it is useful to have specific items identified in connection with potential funding opportunities on the related projects. Obviously, WSSC's work along Kensington Parkway, which is what we were just talking about, is the genesis for that opportunity. And the Huggins redevelopment proposal, Connecticut Avenue and Pliers Mill, and all of the new development along Knowles and Dietrich, which is creating, I think, very significant pedestrian risk at that intersection in particular as the things are done. So to be able to leverage potential funding for those things, obviously this report calls attention to that, so it's not done sort of piecemeal. And then I guess the last thing I'd say is that it's important to manage expectations, because I think some of the proposals in the report perhaps may not be realistic. I remember my earlier days when I was on the council long ago, there was construction or discussion about construction of an underpass or overpass, train tracks, but CSX owns that and requires the approval, and it was a non-starter. Similarly, in terms of a pedestrian or bike bridge at Connecticut Knowles, obviously Connecticut Knowles is a huge challenge in terms of biking and pedestrian, but the height requirement to do a pedestrian or bike bridge there, I think, would have a significant engineering cost. So all of that aside, the bottom line that I want to share is I think that the committee's seminal work has the potential to really genuinely add great value and drive a lot of things for our community going forward. And I hope the mayor and council will help ensure that there are many opportunities for sharing and review and feedback by our residents, because I think this really is one of the more important things we've been involved with. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Joe, you had you sent me a chat message. You had a question or a
Yes, I
statement?
do. Thanks, Mayor Furman. Two very brief questions, I guess, for Councilmember Engel. What kind of enhancements realistically are being proposed or thought of for Kensington Parkway? And second of all, on the speed limit issue, who's going to do the enforcement? I mean, we've seen time and again in Kensington how a number of issues have been proposed. They all sound great, left turn prohibitions and so forth, and we have little enforcement. And it's as if those measures aren't even in place. I know this is preliminary, but I just thought we should not lose sight of the enforcement function as well. So those are my two questions, and thank you, Mayor Furman.
Should I respond?
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks, John, for the comments, and also Joe for the questions. I think that, so Kensington Parkway, I can't recall the exact recommendations that are made through the walk audit process, but there are some things related to crosswalks and sidewalks, if I remember correctly, there's just some funky ways that they've been, the sides of the different sides of the streets have been connected. So we're recommending, to improve those. And
So like one is to do like a high visibility crosswalk with the in-ground pedestrian signs.
Yeah.
When it's not at a stop sign. So
right,
things
especially
like
going
that.
across to the park, to the Cabin Park. And then your question about enforcement, I mean, it's the regular mechanisms we have to enforce now. I think it would just be the same, the same county police that we have enforcing traffic violations and movement violations now. What I understand from the research that was done by some of the council members for the report is that this has been implemented to, I think, successfully with data in some neighboring jurisdictions like Washington, D.C. Now, I'm not sure what that meant in terms of additional enforcement costs. Others in the working group may have knowledge to that.
Okay, thank you.
So,
is there anyone else? There's a comment in the chat.
I'll just take a quick moment to address the speed limits. I mean, I hear you. If we lower the speed limits to 20, we may not see 20. Right now, we don't see 25 when the speed limits are 25. But maybe it's just anecdotal, but we lowered the speed limits on Farragut Avenue and the block above me. And we had our little data box up and showed that the speeds go down. Is it maybe because people feel like when it's 25, they can push the speed to 32, and when we put it at 20, they can only push it now to 27? Maybe. But lower at a realistic point, I think is reasonable. 15, 15's hard to justify because I think we're going to get tickets too, and we all have to live under the laws that we pass, and I think that there has to be some engineering judgment behind the speed limits. But I do think that even if we didn't enforce the limits, which I hope we do some, just lowering the limits, I think, lowers people's factor of comfort in exceeding them.
Well, I guess the point is that we don't really enforce these limits, and dropping it to 20 would sound great, but without an adequate enforcement, it's almost meaningless. And along Kensington Parkway, at least
I guess almost meaningless is not meaningless, and I'm saying that our data box showed an actual reduction on Farragut when we lowered it from 25 to 20.
Well, not just speed limits, but no left turn, prohibitions and so forth. Those are flagrantly violated, and there's no enforcement of that, and you can't tell me otherwise. And along Kensington Parkway, there's all kinds of speeding going on, and people blow through those stop signs routinely. So it's a need of dire enforcement, but a dire need of enforcement, but it's not getting it.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Thank you, Nate. Did you have anything else?
No, so one thing I hadn't considered when we made the discussion slide as one of the outcomes we're hoping for this was, I think there may be some suggested edits from some of you to the report or additions. So please send them and we'll call it a final report then. But I guess for what is the process to get this, I guess, endorsed or approved? I think John's recommendation to leave, what he's calling for is more or less to leave the record open on this issue to see if we can get feedback on the report itself. I don't think we need to, I wouldn't suggest holding a formal public hearing, but just allowing people in the town journal, we'll say it's open, give feedback, give input. We're going to start doing the low-hanging fruit, maybe, if that's okay, those things that Matt and the town can fix. But those other issues that may be a little more requiring of a lot of dialogue, then let's leave it open for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, I think the consensus of the council, at least from what I heard, is that they're pretty pleased with the report. They had some questions. minor concerns, but I think overall there's a consensus that you guys should keep on going. And I think putting it into the journal with the link to your presentation and encouraging people to correspond with members of the committee, even join the committee, is we might need to send a postcard out to people to get their attention. But I am pushing hard on this next journal because there is going to be a tremendous amount of good information in it. And I know everybody is on information overload, but we like to say this is our community, and the news that's going to be in this particular journal is good information, and I hope they read it. So I would encourage the council to, all their friends and neighbors to when it comes out, to please take, a few minutes to go through it. So I think that's where we are.
Great,
Good.
thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. And so just does the council have anything else they want to report individually? I think everybody's had a chance, but I don't, if there's something else you want to mention. The only thing that Connor, was that a yes?
Yeah, just there'll be more yet to come in the Town Journal Bonanza. We will include some information about composting, compost crew we met with, just to discuss further ways to try and educate the community about composting and push subscription numbers, which are actually on the verge of lowering everybody in the town who is composting with them's price. I think if we get 4 more households, but there's more information to come in the journal.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's another thing that's coming in. But I did want to update. I talked to Parks today. They did get, last month I reported that they were waiting on the Maryland Historic Trust to approve the steps there at Kent on the Warner Circle property. They did finally get approval from the Maryland Historic Trust, so they are moving ahead. Now, I was told it's winter time, so a lot of this work cannot be done until the ground warms up and they can do the work. But she felt, good that we should see some work being done there starting in spring and hopefully done by the summer. So that's good news, at least on that particular project. And and Matt, we should be introducing the budget next month. Is that correct, in the March meeting?
Yeah, so we'll introduce the budget on March 8th.
Okay.
Hold the public hearing in April and adoption in May.
Okay. Be sure to set up a meeting with the budget committee so they can review it beforehand. And that would be, I believe, Connor and Bridget. You're still correct. And then I'll join you too. Okay, good. All right, thank you. So let's keep moving on. So from the town manager and staff. Matt? Oh, sorry.
Tracy, I'm sorry. I will be brief, unlike some of the other liars in this meeting. I just want to keep informed of the Knowles Flats project.
Okay.
One of the things that we've mentioned it before, it's pending before planning staff. They're reviewing it. We've mentioned before at meetings that this project has the potential to provide an extra somewhere between 30 and 50 parking spaces in that area. That those parking spaces can serve as overflow visitor spaces for the senior project across the street. It can serve as, in case there's need further up Summit. So I think it's a project that has a lot of merit, not just the potential pedestrian pathway behind it or through it. In the past, we've talked about council support for what's a local map amendment for the actual project. And that seemed to garner some support as a way of supporting the project and acquiring these spots. We may, at the next meeting, propose, or I may raise the possibility of transferring density from one of our sites, which is currently the town garage, up on DuPont, to that property. Again, it has no value to us particularly. In the long term, it will become a road, we hope. But in the short term, it will be a good faith gesture to to why we should, to support a project that has the potential to relieve a lot of either current or upcoming parking demands in that area. So I just wanted to raise that so I'm not hitting people with it blind in March.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I just want to note that Tacoma Park, they meet once a week and they also have late meetings. So I know this is going late for us, but we could be having a meeting every week. So keep that in mind. Matt, go ahead.
We potentially start a little earlier since none of us are commuting anymore.
We could potentially think about that.
Yeah, because this is,
Connor is at work.
early.
Connor has to get.
Literally still at my office.
I'm still in my office.
I commute every day.
Okay, Matt, go ahead.
Quick update on a topic we've been talking about the last few months with regards to bay windows and encroachments within properties in the town. I spoke with the zoning manager with Montgomery County with regards to bay windows and how they define them. And they kind of acknowledged that in 2014, when they started allowing encroachments on the side yards, it's changed the way kind of how developers have worked. They are currently looking at a ZTA, working with the Maryland Building Association to address the concerns not only that we have, but County DPS has to address that. They're going to have a ZTA probably later this year. And then they said there'll probably be about a 6-month delay before they actually adopt it. So staff is probably going to move forward with drafting an ordinance addressing encroachments for a little bit later this year for council to consider. So.
Now, don't we have to be more stringent than the counties?
Correct. The issue right now is the county defines a bay window and it's the way they calculate it. They're only calculating the face, the front face of it. They do not calculate the sides. And Councilmember Bartram and I spoke with Town Attorney Sue Ellen Ferguson and kind of back and forth on this. And then that's when we reached out to county zoning. And, you know, just the way it's defined current term, they will not include the sides of a bay window within the calculation. So you're getting encroachments, you know, 3 feet into the side yard setback in residential zones. And that's something we're going to try to address, or at least limit to some degree. We'll come up with some language and take some feedback and proceed.
Yeah, because the way this is being done, it's actually increasing the square footage of the house. It's not just a bay window that's giving you a larger windowsill. This is actually attached to the foundation. And
correct. And that's kind of what caught us off guard. The property that brought this to our attention, they have a bay window in the foundation of the home, the basement, the first floor and the second floor, and up to 50% of the side of the house. So, I mean, they're increasing the livable space quite a bit compared to what the town's, you know, the spirit of the law is for the town. So.
right. Yeah, I was on that call and I still don't understand how that does it. Okay. All
so
right.
We'll draft something in, it's not going to be in March, but maybe in April. And
that's fine.
And then number 2, just real quick, in order to have the Labor Day parade, there's a number of permits we need to file with the state and county, which is, we start filing them in March. We just kind of wanted a little feedback if the council wants us to proceed with a full parade and festival at this time. Obviously, we can always cancel it down the road, but it's hard to get the permit after the fact. So we kind of need to start that process in the next couple of weeks. So.
How does everybody feel about that? I mean, my gut is that we're not really going to be ready.
Less than 8% of our state is inoculated.
Yeah, I mean, I'd almost rather kind of plan to do something smaller and that doesn't require quite as much, you know, organization up front if there's an opportunity. But I don't want to waste a lot of staff time and on something that more than likely we're not going to be able to do. I don't know. How's the rest of the council feel about that? Because this is a particular event that just requires a lot of upfront planning.
I agree.
Oh. I was just gonna say, how much is it?
I don't mean to be contrarian, but I would sort of I know, right? It's my nature now. You hit 50 and I don't know. I mean, we're talking about September. We have 3 vaccines with 3 more coming up. I would rather be optimistic and scale it back than have it scaled down and not be able to scale it up. But yeah, I don't know.
My comment was going to be similar. What's the harm in keeping options open? How much will we lose on the permit fees? And would the county and the state be willing to, in situations like this, give our money back because of COVID?
I don't think there's a lot of money involved.
Well,
Time and effort.
the only money involved is if we were to reach out to the sponsors that we typically have. With the permitting, there's no fees involved. It's just very time consuming, especially now. Montgomery County changed the way we permit and are allowed to close a state road. There's a lot more barricades involved now, something we did not see this past year, but we would see going forward. So that's kind of the festival parade and coordinator. They just need a general idea of if they should start now with the permitting. Like I said, we can always stop, cancel the parade down the road. We just, if we hit June, we can't turn this thing around.
Will they even allow you to pull the permits when you're not allowed to have these types of gatherings?
I don't know. It's something I can ask SHA. But
Because I mean, I know you can't even pull a park permit technically in some of the parks because until they allow, larger groups.
So a lot of this is all for children, right? There's not one vaccine that's approved for children right now. Not one. I don't think it's going to be a huge lift for the staff. And I think it's highly unlikely that it's going to come to anything.
But I mean, I'm going to side with the optimist here with Darren because, I mean, if you follow science, it sounds like we're going to be getting booster shots in forever.
For adults.
Forever.
For adults.
For adults, sure. But then when will we ever be able to have one if we're all always getting a shot for next year's coronavirus, right? So when will we be able to pursue a Labor Day parade under that logic? I'm just curious.
Once we get to 80%, that's what the CDC is saying. 80%, and right now we're less than 8.
Connor, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand Bridget's concern about whether or not we even hold the function, but we have to make a decision now as to whether or not we prepare to hold the function. That's just filing the permits. Matt, how much, legitimately just out of curiosity, how much time and effort for the staff is filing this permit?
the state permit's probably gonna take 10 to 12 weeks, especially with the new barricade requirements that the county's gonna have. It's not, we have parade and festival coordinators that do most of the work in the beginning for us. It's just, we need to know probably in the next 4 weeks if we need to file the permit or not.
I mean, I'm also optimistic. I'm in favor of filing it and then making a informed decision as we get closer. I think Tracy's got the pivotal question, which is between now and our March meeting, can we call SHA and just say, can we even file this thing?
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we look into that first and then come back in March? A lot of it too, though, is you're going to have to, if you're going to have the festival, you're going to get in the parade, and keep in mind, a lot of these organizations have not been doing much, organizing. So they're, we'd probably end up with a smaller parade, which quite frankly is probably a good thing, because it can be pretty long. So, all right, I will be an optimist. Let's at least find out whether we can do the permits and at least get to that point. I know the book festival has been canceled. That's in April, so that was obvious that that's already been canceled, and so because that has a lot of pre-planning as well. Okay. All right. Thank you. Did you guys have anything else, Susan? Anything? No? Okay. All right, we're ready for public appearances. Anything that's not on the agenda, if somebody wants to discuss, let me know. You can either use the hand or something in the chat.
Jack got his hands up.
Oh, there's Jack. Go ahead, Jack.
Here's Jack.
Yep.
Don't want to be too pessimistic, but just look at the numbers. They're vaccinating 1 million people a day. There are 330 million people in the US. That's going to be December before they get everybody vaccinated.
Well, I don't think Bridget would disagree with you. I think at this point, we're just seeing if we can even file the permits. So, and then we'll make a decision at the March meeting.
No,
once we find that out.
I agree. That's the right thing. That is the right thing to do. Don't
Okay.
misunderstand what I said, but
No, I understand. And so, okay, go ahead.
usually the government takes longer than shorter.
Yes, they do.
I used to work for NASA.
Yes, they do. I agree with that 100%. Joe, you got your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Furman. I just wanted to give a shout out to the town crew and Annie as well for helping to clean up the broken glass and other refuse that was surprisingly left on the street here in the south side of town, Frederick Place, by the recycling truck a few weeks ago. And I was told that there was like broken glass all over streets in the town. And so I was really pleased with the response that Annie and the town crew made in attending to this matter. Also, the town crew has done fine work. I think we should really acknowledge that on getting the streets of the town pretty clear of the snows that we've been having. And they've really done fine, efficient and very effective work, and really pleased with that. I was wondering, the video that you mentioned last month, Mayor Furman, about the Mormon temple having sent or posted, I've not seen any links to that in any of the town listserv posts. So
Oh, I sent it. Who did I send that to? I sent it to somebody.
I thought you were going to put it on the listserv, town listserv.
I know I sent it to somebody to post, but I don't recall who. I'll post it again.
All right, thanks. And finally, since every year in Kensington is an election year, and we're less than 4 months from the June election, I'm just wondering where the two incumbent council members might stand in terms of their planning to run for re-election or not. Councilmember Connor Crimmins, who is pro tem our South Side council member, and Darren Bartram.
Longer.
Not if I can get Pepco to come around. I
Anyway,
thought I'd get to March until this question came up, Joe.
I'm sorry?
But I'd have at least until March until this question came up.
I thought you were the one who said that you started campaigning in Kensington in January.
Every day is a campaign, Joe.
Every day's an election year.
Let me know if there's glass I need to sweep up.
Okay, I shall. Before you leave the South Side. But anyway, do you guys have plans? I mean, are you intending to run for re-election or what?
Pending anything that I don't know happening in my life, yes, I do plan to run for re-election.
I see. And Councilmember Bartram?
I mean, look, I think we are working well together. I think we're getting some good stuff done. Absent some change circumstance, I would plan to run again.
Good, thank you. Thanks, Mayor Furman.
Joel, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you guys for the lengthy meeting. And thanks Connor Crimmins on your reach back about the composting service regarding at the farmers market and just educational events. I'm still wondering though, if it's possible for the town to set up a green team committee to analyze how the town can become more environmentally friendly in relation to its own operations and also following Montgomery County's guidelines and the states and federal, et cetera. But, you know, I think there's just a lot that you can do starting now, including factoring in environmental stuff with your greenscape committees and just making sure that there's planning in that regards. And so I don't know what the process is to do that. And I know Councilmember Engel said that it might be a little too much to set up another committee dedicated to something, but that's one of my concerns as a resident.
Right. And I think the Greenscape Committee and you know, unfortunately, the green actually means plants, not environmental. And at least with the people that are on the committee now, their focus is, you know, parks and, you know, the plantings that you would put in a park. So I think at this particular time, I think we're gonna, you know, it's like looking at the LED lights. It's like looking at the composting. I know we're kind of nitpicking, but you know, you have 4 council members and then myself, and we're all doing things, you know, on, these aren't full-time jobs for us. So, you know, we're doing as much as we can. And I think we're all pretty, I've got a lot on our plate. I'm not dismissing the idea, but I think at this particular time, I think it's, I mean, I'd like to see, you know, people like yourself who brought the issue to us about the composting and we were able to act on it. I'm not sure, unless, you know, one of the other committee people, or, you know, there's nothing wrong with starting a group that, you know, doesn't have to have the council involved. So I think that's the hardest part is trying to add a council member to a particular, you know, to lead it. Because that's, I mean, let's just say council members didn't used to lead all the committees, but we do it by default because we can't get volunteers to do it. It's just really hard. So, so not only are we serving on the council, we're now leading all these committees. So Joel, let me give it some thought. Let me talk to some of the council members individually and see what we can do and see if we can. And I'm going to have a Greenscape meeting at the end of the month. We haven't actually gotten a date yet, and see if they're willing to look into more environmental issues. And maybe we can attract a few more members who we can have a, you know, one group, but some are looking at different things. Does that sound fair?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joel.
I would just add to that sometimes committees are places that things go to die, and we get great suggestions from residents that I think, you know, we give a lot of credibility to, and we start, you know, taking them and running. One of them is, for example, recently there was a suggestion that we use less road signs. So, you know, without a committee, we are looking into possibly acquiring brine equipment and switching to that for future. So I think there are, you know, just because we don't have a committee doesn't mean that good ideas won't get implemented. We would love to you know, be more environmentally conscious of town operations and just encourage it throughout the town. So thank you, Joel.
Okay, so anyone else? We lost a lot of people on that last interruption. So anyone else from the public? Not seeing, is there certain clarify that needs future? Oh, yes, actually, John, it's funny that you brought that up because this was when we had the Racial Justice Committee meeting. I brought to your attention about why sometimes you want to be a little slow at sending out the. So glad you were here. Okay, all right, so let's move on. So we're going to ordinance, resolutions, and regulations. Matt?
Sure. Charter resolution number CR-01-2020. The reason why it's 2020 is that was the year it was introduced. Is before you for adoption this evening. We held the public hearing on January 11th, and we kept the record open to this past Friday, February 5th until 4 p.m. We received no additional comments post the public hearing last month. If it is adopted by the council this evening, we are required by state law to post it 4 consecutive weeks in a paper reference, which would be the Washington Post, and it would take effect 50 days after adoption, which is March 30th.
Okay. So we're not taking any more public comment this evening, and we are going to looking for a motion.
I was just looking for the number. I move that we, I move to pass charter resolution number CR-01-2020.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Hands, please. Okay, thank you very much. That's unanimous. All right, next item on the agenda.
Ordinance number O-03-2020. This is the county's pesticide law that we are looking to adopt. County would enforce the regulation. Public hearing was held on January 11th last month. If the council decides to adopt this evening, it would go into effect March 1st.
Okay. And again, we're not taking any more public comment on this issue, so all I need is a motion.
I'll move
My
to
preference.
adopt
Oh,
ordinance.
wait a minute, Darren's got a question. Darren?
Look, I know I know we've gone through the process and we've taken public comment and received none. And it's a discouraging thing. I know we have to do it because we have an election coming up for the charter amendment, but I would just prefer to put this off. For a bunch of reasons. I don't want to prolong this meeting particularly. There's no urgent need to adopt this tonight. And
Are you talking about the pesticides?
Possibly give it a little bit. Pesticides, yeah.
Do we have a second? Was there a second?
When Nate was
I
making the
interrupted
motion.
Nate before he finished. If he wants to make the motion and we can do that.
No,
Go ahead.
Make the motion. Let's
Okay,
do this. I don't want to talk about pesticides anymore.
Okay. Well, since I started, I'll finish it. I move to adopt ordinance number O-03-2020.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Show hands. Okay. I see
All
3
right,
hands, 4 hands. Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. All right, Matt, number 3, calling of a introduction.
Ordinance number O-03-2021 was introduced last month in January. This evening is the public hearing. Anyone from the public that would like to make a comment with regards to this ordinance, please post in the chat.
And be clear that this is basically kind of what we took from the resolution. Now we have to make it an ordinance.
Correct. The main point of this ordinance is to no longer request a requirement for an absentee ballot. For example, if the town, if there was an absentee ballot that was requested in the upcoming town election, we would no longer be allowed to ask for a reason prior to giving the absentee ballot, which abides with state law.
Okay. Council, do you have any questions before? Well, I guess we'll open that to, it's a hearing, but yeah, do you have any questions?
I'll make a comment, but after the public has a chance.
Okay. I know, open it up to the public. Does anybody have any questions regarding this ordinance? Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat and I'm not seeing any hands.
We have a comment from Karen Craig, says that she's in favor of the ordinance.
Oh, okay. Okay, I see that. Okay. Okay. Doesn't look like anyone else has any comments, so we'll need a motion to keep the record open until, what's the Friday before the next meeting?
March 5th.
Okay. So,
Well, should I make my comment now?
oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Darren. I'm getting
I mean,
tired.
I just want to point out a couple things about the draft because we can change it, and I guess I would just seek support for these. It's a cleanup of the code, strikes the absentee reason, which is kind of superfluous because we can't do it anyway because we're overridden by state law. It also strikes the requirement of an oath, and we had a discussion about this when we were crafting the procedure for the last election. And I got the sense of the council that we actually wanted when you fill out an absentee ballot that you certify that you're the person completing it. So I would prefer that the oath get mailed back, or would get returned to this amendment. And then in the process of coming up with procedure for new elections, we sort of debated, do we go back to the old system of in-person voting? Do we continue to do it voting by mail? And I got the sense that where we settled was that we wanted to make absentee ballot more convenient. And so one of the possibilities that we raised was the idea that we would mail an absentee ballot postcard, or request postcard to residents, or that we would make it, the front or back page of the town journal. And that concept is not encompassed in this code revision. So those are the two things that I would flag is the code, the absentee ballot request and the oath provision.
Okay. Matt, do you have that? You and Susan? Would it be helpful if Darren just wrote that out to you?
That'd be fine. And then the only other question I would have is, Councilmember Bertram, do you want us to just use the oath that we used this past election?
I don't remember the wording, but
okay.
As long as the original oath in the code requires them to affirm that they are unavailable to vote on election day, and we struck that, and we kept what was left, and I would keep what was left minus the unavailability.
Okay, so we'll make those changes for the March meeting and have it available.
And then does anybody mind if we make like the top half or the bottom half of the town journal right before the election essentially a absentee ballot request form?
Well, the only thing, and I'm not objecting to it, but the town journal goes out electronically to more people than who are in the town because it goes out to our list of people who have signed up. And then, of course, the town journal is electronic, it also goes out and it's on our website. So, people have to register. So, if I live in Parkwood and I sent it in, I'm not going to get a ballot, but,
right.
It's not necessarily just the journal doesn't go to just town residents.
Okay. Well, I welcome other thoughts and we don't have to resolve tonight because this is really just, we're leaving the record open. Those were two things that I remembered us discussing and didn't see embodied in the revision.
Okay, well, I don't have any objections to that. So unless somebody else does. Okay, so can we make a motion then to keep the record open?
I move that we keep the record open on ordinance O-01-2021 until 4 p.m. on Friday, March 5th.
Okay, is there a second?
A second.
All those in favor, hands? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. And last one.
Resolution number R-01-2020 is before you. This will the council received the proposal from Linton Schaefer to conduct our audit for the fiscal year coming up, along with 2 additional years. There's also included the 2017 contract, which essentially will be extending. So we would extend the 2017 contract with the proposed new rates from Linton Schaefer.
Okay. Council have any questions? Audience have any questions? Okay, can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number R-01-2021.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, thank you, Nate. All those in favor? Hands? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, it's only 20 of 11. Did you want to hang out till 11 or are we ready to have a motion to adjourn? Don't jump all at once. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there, all right, I'm going to let Bridget do the motion to adjourn. Darren, would you like to second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor, let's see hands. Okay, thank you so much. And let's try to have a meeting that's maybe not quite so long next week, next month. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.